Okay. Hello? Everybody hear me? Okay, good evening. It is 7 o'clock, and at this point, I would like to call the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School Committee meeting to order on Thursday, February 17th, 2022. And I would like to begin by inviting you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Before we get started, I want to let everybody know that this meeting is being recorded and also live streamed. It's being recorded and live streamed by HWCam, and you can watch that at the HWCam on YouTube live stream. We're going to start citizens' comments in a moment. We're going to have available citizens' comments both from people here live in the room as well as those available to the people on Zoom. For those of you on the Zoom link, just so you know, we're going to do the citizens' comments, and then when we're complete with citizens' comments, we will close the Zoom link, and those of you who are on that can continue to watch on the HWCam. But the Zoom link will be closed after the citizens' comments. I see that we have a large number of people here. We have about 15 or 20 minutes designated to the citizens' comments. We're going to go through that time, and then at that point, we'll sort of see where we are. And it is at the discretion of the chair whether we continue forward. And we might just, like I said, see where we are, see how many more people would like to speak. When you do speak, I ask that you state your full name and your address. And if you could please spell your name for us. Our recording secretary really wants to make sure that we get those accurately recorded. When you do speak, I ask that you speak for 3 minutes. We'll have a designated timer. I'm going to ask Michelle Horgan to be our timer. When she sees that you have 30 seconds left, she's going to just say 30 seconds so that you know. And then at the end of your 3 minutes, she'll let you know when your time is up. Okay. So at this point, if there is someone in the room who would like to speak, I'd ask you to approach the podium.
Dana?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It appears to me that we have a member participating remotely, and I think you need to announce that.
You know, Michelle, I can't hear you.
We have a member participating remotely, and you need to announce
Oh,
that.
I'm very sorry. Thank you, Michelle. Yes, this evening we do have, in addition to all the things about we're being recorded, we do need to mention that Julia Campbell is joining us remotely. And can you hear us, Julia? I'm looking to see.
Unmuting.
Oh, okay.
I think she's unmuting.
Julia, can you hear us?
Yes,
Okay.
it's very loud, but I can hear you.
It's very loud. Well, okay. That's better than too quiet. And okay, thank you, Julia.
It's echoey, but I can hear.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you, Michelle. And thank you for your patience. Okay, go ahead.
John D. Simone, John Desimone, 15 Porter Street. On February 3rd, 2021, Hamilton-Wenham Human Rights Coalition filed articles of organization with the Commonwealth, naming a member of this school committee as its president, with its principal place of business being that member's address. Its stated purpose is to engage in activities promoting education and furthering human rights issues, as well as all other legal activities. The coalition is pending a 501c4 with the IRS. A 501c4 is a nonprofit social welfare organization which must primarily engage in activities that furthers its exempt purpose. Unlike 501c3 charitable organizations, C4 organizations are legally permissible to lobby and engage in political activism. Moreover, like the other 501c4 organizations in Massachusetts, The coalition's actions, like endorsing Jamie Bellicito for state rep and others that I'll get to, appear to qualify it as a political action committee under Mass General Law, Chapter 55, Section 1. Two other coalition political causes are the Hamilton Wenham Indigenous Land and the Progress Pride Flag initiatives. These matters should be familiar to this committee. Both have been thrusted before you during the tenure of and at the behest of the committee member, who is also the president and co-founder of the coalition. So to be clear, the elected member and vice chair of this committee, who is also the co-founder, president of, solicitor of funds for a likely political action committee, championed and voted in favor of that institution's initiatives, making them this committee's policies. Under Mass General Law 55, Section 5A, no individual holding elective public office shall establish, finance, maintain, control, or serve as a principal officer of a political action committee. Mass General Law 268A outlines the conflict of interest rules by which municipal employees, which includes each of you, must abide. Today, pursuant to my public records request, it was confirmed that neither town nor this committee's councils issued a 268A opinion after June 30th, 2020. So tonight, I'm calling on that elected official to immediately recuse themselves from all further committee business while this committee engages council and assures the residents of Hamilton Wenham that this
30
member
seconds.
has not violated Chapter 55 and 268A. Pending your decisions, I will determine if any actions are warranted with Massachusetts Attorney General, Secretary of the Commonwealth, and State Ethics Commission.
Thank you. Next, let's, do you want to go to Zoom?
Yep.
Okay, if there's someone on Zoom,
Mr. Musser, I'm going to ask you to unmute. You're up. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Eric Musser, ERIC-MUSSER, and I live at 9 Naples Road in Hamilton. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
yes.
Perfect. So I've had some great email conversations with many of you and was asked to bring this topic up given the last school committee meeting regarding the school's flag policy or lack thereof. I've emailed several times the school committee as well as the superintendent, and I've yet to receive a satisfactory answer, so I'll try again tonight. From my understanding, there is no flag policy for flags being displayed outside the school, as that policy is still being developed by council. As you are all aware, I have filed an official records request to inquire how much has been spent on legal fees related to this matter so far, as well as how the school committee came to appoint said council and if any code of ethics were breached. My question is now about the policy with flags being flown inside the school. I ask that you please provide the community with a written policy that allows flags to be displayed in prominent places within the school apart from the American flag. It is evident that the pride flag is currently the only other flag displayed within all the schools apart from the American flag. Can other flags be displayed? How would they be approved to be displayed? And who makes the decision which flags can be displayed, as there already appears to be a policy to allow flags in the schools? Is there an approved list of flags which can be displayed? As the school committee has stated that their intent is to accept diversity, embrace tolerance, and allow for different points of view to be presented, I'm now formally asking that the pro-life flag be displayed alongside each pride flag. This flag is a unifying symbol of the sanctity of each and every human life in our community, just as the pride flag is a unifying symbol for the LGBTQ community. I don't anticipate this being problematic or contentious, again, as the school committee has already stated their mission to accept diversity, and in this case, diversity of thought should also be accepted and promoted within our schools. In addition, I'm sure no one here would argue against the sanctity of each and every life, so just as no one would argue about the value of life for all LGBT students. Section 8 of the school committee superintendent protocol states, in quotes, school committee members will vote according to their convictions, avoid bias, and will uphold and support the decisions of the majority of the committee once the decision has been made. Positions will not be used for personal or partisan gain. The definition of partisan is a strong supporter of a party, cause, or person. If the only flag allowed to fly is the pride flag, it would seem clear that the school committee, or at least some members of the committee, are evidently not following Section 8 of the school committee protocols, and would
30
indeed
seconds.
be acting with bias and for specific partisan gain. Understood. If other flags are not allowed, I respectfully ask that the only flag allowed to be flown in the schools are the American flag alone, so as to avoid bias, partisanship, and potential future lawsuits regarding discrimination. Please let me know when I can expect a reply to this request, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Do you want to do one more on Zoom?
Whatever you want.
It looks like we have just one more person on Zoom, is that correct? So let's have that person, and then we'll go back to the in the room.
Okay, Laurie Manganaro, can you unmute? You should be all set.
Good evening. My name is Lori Manganaro. I live on Garfield Avenue in Hamilton. Okay. My name is Lori Manganaro. I live on Garfield Avenue in Hamilton, and you spell my name Lorrie. Manganaro is Manganaro. The students in my household attend Miles River and Cutler, where the data in Exhibit 6 show that 62% and 54% of staff, respectively, prefer to continue masking. I would not want to go to work somewhere where more than half of the staff is feeling nervous and uncomfortable. That does not make for a productive environment. I wonder if the district can provide lessons and learning if teachers call out. Do we have substitutes that can provide more than a study hall to cover that? Please consider.
She froze for a second.
She froze.
Yeah,
Laurie, if
okay.
you can hear me, you froze.
All right, let's give,
She might try turning off her video, then we might get the sound back.
Actually, I think she just, Laurie, can you hear me?
Hi, I'm not sure what happened there.
okay.
I'm sorry.
We can hear you again.
If I can continue, I would ask that you consider maintaining the. I'm asking that you consider to maintain the current mask policy through March 15th. This will give 2 weeks post-February vacation to see what happens after many students travel. This will give staff and families more time to source KN95 masks, as well as discuss their concerns with their doctors. Dana, Anna, David, Michelle, Jennifer, and Julia, I sincerely thank you for all the time that you volunteer away from your family to be on the school committee and keep our district running. You are seen and you are appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie.
Okay. Now back to in the room. It doesn't look like there's anyone more right at the moment on Zoom. Or do you have one?
Nope.
No? Okay, if anyone in the room would like to speak, please approach the podium. Hi.
Hi,
Go ahead.
I'm Erica Mitchell. It's E-R-I-C-A, and the last name's Mitchell, M-I-T-C-H-E-L-L, 30 Marjorie Street in Hamilton. I just wanted to speak in favor of the work that the school committee and Mr. Tracy and all the administration have been doing on the budget this year. I think it's really a tremendous amount of progress from where we were last year, so I just wanted to speak in appreciation of that. I know there's also a lot of, mass debates going on right now, and I just want to, as a citizen, recognize that this is a very difficult time. There's a lot of different opinions. You literally are in a situation where no matter what you do, you're not going to please everybody. So I appreciate how conscientious you've all been about thinking and considering many different perspectives and opinions, and thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak? Please approach the podium. Okay. Mr. Tracy, do we have anyone else on Zoom? It looks like we do. All right. Go ahead. Looks like
Okay.
Beth.
Beth, you are all set to unmute.
All right. Can you hear me?
We can.
Awesome. So Beth Herr, 270 Asbury Street. I don't know going forward what decisions you guys are going to be making. So What I do want to say is under the Civil Rights Act of 1964, under Title VII, you cannot discriminate or segregate based on religion. So I'm assuming that all people would be like if you have students, I would like to see them all unmasked at the same time, not segregated based on vaccinated or unvaccinated. Same with staff and teachers. I do not think there should be any separation based on vaccine status. And I think that's a really important thing. And I also, if I was you, I wouldn't want the responsibility or the liability of pushing anyone into getting a vaccine to make anything seem easier. I wouldn't want to push a parent or a staff or a student because personally, I know 3 people who've been vaccine injured. I probably know more. 3 that have had life-altering injuries from this particular vaccine, have had to change jobs. I mean, all of it. So, and we're still not talking about natural immunity, which is obviously we know now is more of, it's better than actually taking the vaccine. So I just wanted to, not segregate, especially because I don't think you guys want to break any law like Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. And I wasn't sure if you guys were aware of that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as you're making your decisions. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Beth, can you please clarify your last name? I don't think we heard it.
Oh, Herr, H-E-R-R.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Right. Looks like we're good on Zoom.
Sorry,
I have anyone else in the room? Hi.
Hello, my name is Ryan Quinn, R-Y-A-N-Q-U-I-N-N. I live at 16 North Street in Hamilton. I just wanted to say I think it's unfortunate that the State Department of Ed is lifting its mask mandate because it puts the decision on school committees and really makes them subject to all kinds of pressure within the town that if we had leadership at the state level, you ought not be subject to. And I think you've been doing a good job under very difficult circumstances. I just wanted to say that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, it looks like we have time for one more, and it looks like we have one more. So let's do one more.
Online?
Yeah, Sarah, it looks
Okay,
like.
Sarah Barker, you're all set to unmute.
Hi, my name is Sarah Barker, S-A-R-A-B-A-R-K-E-R, and I live at 6 A.J. Gordon Court in Hamilton. And I wanted to thank everyone in the administration, the teachers and staff for all that you have done to navigate what was once a rapidly shifting landscape in our community. We began with little to no info, and we understand that. Parents understand that. Everyone understands that. But thankfully, that is no longer the case. We know now scientifically that cloth masks don't work. We also know now that there are greater implications for our children beyond just the physical. However, the physical is important. And I think it's important to point out that per the CDC, the death rate in children is 0.008%. That's 0.001%. So it's almost nothing. Does that negate the importance and value of the lives who are lost? 100% no, and I don't know anyone that would say that. However, rather than using the weekly case rate, which if we use that for flu or colds or norovirus or whatever, we would be in masks forever. Why don't we more wisely look at the consistently extremely low death rate, which is not impacted by case rates? And then we could go forward in scientific confidence that there is zero need to ever mask our children. They are whole beings. They're not guinea pigs, and they deserve to be truly seen, to truly see others when they walk in the classroom, to see us lead them forward in truth and in security so that they may focus on academic and social learning. One of the arguments to continue masking is for the small percentage of people that are immunocompromised. That is important to consider. However, if we considered every unique case in every situation, we wouldn't be able to get anywhere as a society. Case in point, we have a child with special needs. He has very hypersensitive hearing. It is our choice and our responsibility as parents to put him into situations where he can succeed. But do we require everybody to walk around quietly so that he is socially comfortable in every setting? Of course not. He has some physical needs as well. Do we require everybody to mask and take all these extra precautions around him? Of course not. We need to think about what is best for all of our children throughout each day. And I think it's past time to take off the mask. It's honestly frustrating as a parent that we're waiting as long as we are when we have the green light to be done with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Okay, so at this time, we're going to end the citizens' comments portion of the meeting, and we're going to close the Zoom link. And just once again, those of you watching on Zoom, you can continue to watch at HWCam. And I thank you all for your comments.
If you're on Zoom, we're going to close the link. You can continue to watch on HWCam's YouTube channel.
Okay, thank you. You ready? All right. Next up on the agenda, we have our, at each meeting we review a portion of the school committee protocols. And I think Michelle Horgan is going to read.
As elected members of the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School Committee, we, including the superintendent, accept the high honor and trust that has been placed in us to ensure that the students of the district receive the best education possible. To that end, we hereby commit to the following in the conduct of our business. Number 5, if an individual school committee member receives an email relevant to overall district policy or operations, they will forward it to the full school committee and the superintendent.
Thank you. And next on the agenda, we have, I believe that Chris Demaraki, our student representative, is going to give us a report.
Do you want to go up there?
You can do it from there, your mic.
However you want to do it, and if you could just lean the mic towards you so I can hear you, whatever you want, or you can stand up there, whatever is easier.
I have a slide. What's the screen mirroring thing?
DECA Rover.
DECA Rover. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Demaraki, and I'm the student body president of Hamilton-Wenham Regional High School. And before I talk to you all about the student opinion on the mask mandate, I'm here to present the updates from each school in the district. At the Hamilton-Wenham Regional High School, we have a new member of the high school. We have Frisco. He's a high school therapy dog, and he had just joined, and he's now under Miss Stevens, who is his primary handler. He is a great addition to the high school. He's such a good, friendly dog that everyone loves. They have now started an after-school academy program for the second semester for students who may need some extra help. On Monday, February 7th, grade 9, there was a communications leadership workshop, and on February the 18th, 10th grade in-school field trip in Portsmouth Naval Shipyard will come. There's also a DECA state conference, and the Drama Fest will be held March 19th to 20th with the Oregon Trail, and the high school representatives have met to discuss changes in the student handbook. I was a part of that, and we all met during a block in the day, and we have another meeting, and then we will come back to you guys on what we came up with. For sports, the Hamilton girls basketball team are currently 13-4, and the boys basketball team are 5-13. The girls indoor track have states tomorrow, and the boys indoor track also have states tomorrow. And the girls swim and dive are 2 and 4, and they placed second in the Cal. And boys swim and dive were 1 and 4 and placed fifth in the Cal. While the hockey team are 9 and 8 and have their next game this Saturday. And for our individual students, we had a college signing day on January the 25th. And we have Haley Hamilton, who is going to Middlebury College to continue her athletic career. Jane McGuire, who's going to Colby College. And Owen Schmidt, who's going to Trinity. At the Miles River Middle School, in January, they held a COVID-19 booster clinic, and 75 school students and around 60 high school students received their booster shot. On Wednesday, January 26th, the middle school and high school students welcomed Katie Greer to present to the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade students in separate presentations on navigating an increasingly complex digital world. And they are currently finishing up their winter food drive to support the Accord Food Pantry. Additionally, auditions were held for the spring play, This Is a Test, and after school remains busy with activities, and the chorus students created a great video, including an original artwork for the song Monster, which is included here. If any of you guys want to see this later, I don't think I can show this now, but if you want to see it later, I have the video, and I will send it to you guys. At Color Elementary, 5th graders presented a lesson on Feelings Friday about positive affirmations. These affirmations included, I am capable, I am kind, and I am smart. As a follow-up, the school counselor shared with follow-up activities to complete in the classrooms and create a community bulletin board. These Feeling Fridays lessons are presented weekly to the school community. And at Color, they asked families to generate games, and they came up with 60 games, and they greatly appreciate the support from the families and know that the students are looking forward to playing them. And the 5th grade and 4th grade students continue to enjoy the 4th grade Ukes on Deck and 5th grade String Jam. Mrs. Graham thinks that their rhythm is fantastic. Being a previous member of that band, I'm glad they're doing well. At Winthrop, to start the new year, every Winthrop student made a snowflake, and they're currently all being decorated throughout Winthrop. So, they also started a Winthrop News Network, which has taken place throughout Winthrop, traditionally morning announcements. Each morning, 2 5th grade students record the morning news on Flipgrid. These news include a weather forecast, a review of the daily lunch choice, quote, joke, or riddle. The link is sent out to the classrooms for students to review as a part of their morning routine and is a great way for 5th graders to practice their public speaking skills. 1st and 4th grader buddies are pairing up to decorate bags for Ellie Square Friends in Beverly. The bags will be filled with food at Ellis Square Friends and are distributed to homeless members to the community. At Bucher Elementary, the 3rd graders visited the Mass Audubon to learn about some animals and forests, and 4th graders went to the Discovery Museum to learn about sound waves. This is all thanks to the Friends of Bucher, and they're very grateful for their sponsorship. And during the attendance in June, it was quite low due to a COVID outbreak, which left some students and teachers unable to go to school, but they're currently back to normal, and they're going right back on track. And now I'm transitioning into a student survey of a mask mandate poll just for high school students. I also made one for the middle school students. We asked the question, on February 28th, the in-school mask mandate will be lifted for all schools in the state of Massachusetts. At that point, each district can decide whether or not masks have to be worn in their school buildings. With that being said, and knowing that over 85% of the students are vaccinated at the high school, would you be comfortable with the district making the decision to have masks become optional? We received 239 responses. Out of the 239, 207 students said yes, while 34 students said no. I would be uncomfortable with masks becoming optional. That's 86.2% compared to 13.8%. We then asked them if they had any thoughts or concerns regarding this issue. One of the concerns was, lift the policy, don't let the 15% control the decision. Another student asked, will non-vax students continue to wear masks? Another student asks, I think it's safe, but the day after break is the worst time to take off masks. And most of the students reply with, just please remove the mask mandate. If you all want to see the survey, Mr. Menegoni, and I believe I shared it with Mr. Tracy as well, we would like to go over it. This is the next, we have the results from the Miles River Middle School. We asked them the same question without the data from the vaccination rate, because I currently do not know it at the middle school. And we asked them, would you be comfortable with the district making the decision to have masks become optional? They had a somewhat higher rate of 88.4 and 11.6. Out of the 232 responses we received, 205 students responded with yes, they would be comfortable, and 27 students responded with no, they would not be comfortable. Some of their thoughts and concerns were, most of my middle school experience has been under masks or on Zoom, and I know that me and my friends would love to go back to normal. Another student asks again, if you're not vaccinated, can you still wear no mask? Another student said, yes, I would be comfortable with it, but I think it would be better after a week or two because everyone is traveling and flying, and I could be exposed during their trip. And another student said, I want to be able to see my friends' faces. That is currently the end of my presentation, and if you guys have any questions or other concerns, I will stay up here until I answer them.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. I do hope that you are going to send the link to the chorus monster song.
Of course.
Do members of the committee have questions for Chris?
I just have a quick question about the mentoring at the high school after school. Is it peer, or is it teacher with students? Do you know?
I believe most peer. I will look into it if it's teacher as well. I currently do not know that much.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Of course.
Oh, Mr. Tracy.
Can help with that. We actually budgeted to have an adult run that, but they're also taking advantage of peer tutors as well, so.
Great,
we
super,
have
thanks.
At least one, I think there are actually multiple adults switching depending on the day, so somebody's not doing it every day.
Okay. Do we have other questions?
Yes.
Yep.
All set, nope, all set, thank you.
Thank you. I really want to thank you for doing that work and getting that survey done. I appreciate it.
Of course.
It's important information, so thank you. Okay. All right, next up is the consent agenda. Does anyone on the committee have any items on the consent agenda that they would like to hold?
I'd like to hold the Ed Fund donation, please.
Okay, the Ed Fund donation, okay.
I'd like to hold item C.
I'd like to hold the DECA field trip.
Those are both one the same, correct? Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't.
Nope, that's fine. Okay, so, all right, so Michelle and Jen held the item C, the DECA field trip, and Michelle Horgan is holding the Athletic Facilities Improvement Project donation from the Ed Fund, correct? Okay. All right, Jen, I think we're ready for a motion.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as written, with the exception of the National DECA field trip and the Ed Fund donation.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Anna Siedzik. All right, all those in favor?
Does it have to be a roll call because of Julia?
Oh, I think it has to be a roll call. You're correct. Thank you, because we have Julia. All right, all right, we will go around the room. Julia?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Dana's a yes. Anna?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Okay, and it is unanimous, and the motion passes. All right, let's start with Part C, the DECA Nationals field trip. I'm going to start with you, Michelle Bailey. I know you had some concerns, and we can hear from Jen as well if they're different.
I just saw that later on, we're going to be discussing the state competition, and I'm just wondering if we should move that down there because the issues may be commingled.
Yeah.
Sure.
That would be
Is
good.
that your?
That would be good.
Yep. Okay, that makes some sense. Jen, was that your same concern, or does that solve your concern?
Sorry, I can't hear her.
Oh, HW Cam, could we turn Michelle Bailey's microphone up a little bit? We're having
I can
some.
project my voice. I
Okay.
don't have a problem. I just think that we should move that down on the agenda to where we're going to be talking about the state competition, because the issues may be one and the same or commingled.
Jen, if we were to do that, would that address the concern that you had?
I think so, yes.
Okay, all right. Anyone else? Okay, all right, so we'll move that down. And I trust that Michelle and Jen, you will keep me on track to make sure that we do that when we move it down. Michelle Horgan, what did you want to talk about regards to the Ed Fund donation?
Well, I just wanted to firstly thank the Hamilton Wenham Ed Fund for supporting the Athletic Improvements Project. Back in FY20, we budgeted $60,000 to engage Gale Associates. When Tom Geary reached out to Gale for an updated study, the cost came back at $87,000, well above what we had budgeted for. We moved forward with Gale Associates on a limited basis, and people at the Ed Fund came forward to us saying that they really wanted to support this program, the improvements to our facilities, and they wanted to ask how they could help. Tom Geary wrote a grant, which was approved, and so thankfully, we now can go back to Gale and have them provide a full study, including the design, schematic, and everything that we've asked of them. So just want to thank both the hard work of Tom and, of course, the Ed Fund and the support that, that they are showing to us, and it's really showing that it's a community effort to make our athletic fields where they should be in improving them. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have anything they want to add to that, or any discussion or questions? Okay.
I'm looking at the 19,000 in permitting and wondering about that, since we've already sort of lost about that in permitting the first round.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear you.
Nothing about permitting.
In phase 3 of the project, it says 18,750 for permitting. I'd be really trepidatious about moving forward with that prematurely, considering we've done that before and have now eaten $15,000 of permitting costs already.
So the scope changed, you understand that, right?
Excuse me?
The scope changed of the project.
Yes.
So I don't understand so you don't want to put the money towards the feasibility study, or?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying let's not just spend the permitting money before we have the project in motion.
Correct. You know what, thank you. I'll bring that back to Tom and the committee when we have our meeting at the next time.
So we don't have a motion on the floor for this, but this is to accept the donation. So I guess I would ask for a motion on that.
I move that we accept the donation from the Ed Fund in the amount of $27,730.
Second.
Second by Michelle Horgan. So is there further discussion? Okay, looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor? Roll call. Oh, I forgot. It's good I have you. All right, I'm going to go the reverse order. I'm going to do Michelle Bailey. Let's start with you.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
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 Dana's a yes.
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
All right, and it is unanimous, and the motion passes. Okay. All right. Next up, under new business, we have some edits to the MOA. I think you all know what the edits are. And maybe we'll start just with a motion, and then we can have some discussion. Jen, you willing to make a motion?
I move that we accept the MOA changes as written.
Second.
Second by Michelle Bailey. Does anyone on the committee have any questions? Hannah?
Has the HWA ratified this yet?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we're following them?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Julia? No? Okay. Okay, looks like we're ready to vote. All right, let's start with you, David.
Yes.
Dana's yes.
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 Michelle Bailey, yes.
Julia?
Yes.
All right, Julia's a yes. And the vote is unanimous and the motion passes. Okay, next up, we have a discussion regarding the DECA state competition discussion, and we're going to talk about the nationals simultaneously, I guess. Okay.
Let me do the state one first. I brought this back because there was a change that we discussed last time that we thought would never happen, but it has happened. So I wanted to bring it back for clarity. We ended the last time with voting on the approval based on the idea that Boston was requiring vaccination. The DECA group has been given a waiver by the city of Boston and are not required to be vaccinated to attend the event in Boston. So we had made a decision based on the state. We did not put any of our own contingencies on it. I went back to double check and watch the video again, so I wanted to bring it back without creating an issue and make sure everybody is on the same place. Right now, we approved this trip with the idea that it was a requirement to be vaccinated to go. There is no longer a requirement to be vaccinated to go based on a waiver from the mayor's office. And we do have a participant who is unvaccinated who would like to attend.
Eric, just for clarity, my understanding was that the national DECA group provided a waiver. This isn't a specific waiver for Hamilton Wenham, correct?
Correct. Correct. This is for the entire conference in Boston. The national group requested the waiver. It went through a process where the office of the mayor, when they were called by DECA to ask for the waiver, said that they would be exempt. And then they were told by somebody else in the mayor's office that they wouldn't be exempt. So they finally got a letter from the Deputy Director of Policy and Planning in Boston apologizing. They interpret the policy to exempt participants in school-sponsored events and deem the attendees of March DECA conference, including students, advisors, chaperones, and judges, to be participating in a school-sponsored activity. Therefore, the DECA conference is not subject to the terms of the Be Together policy, which is the vaccination policy.
Okay.
So I wanted to bring it back to make sure everybody was on the same page with the decision.
Just for clarity, what do you need from us? Because what I'm hearing, make sure I understand this, what I'm hearing you say is that your understanding is that given that the vaccination is no longer a requirement, that we would need to take no action, that the field trip could, is that what you're saying? That you think that the field trip has been approved?
We approved the field trip based on the fact that Boston was requiring vaccines. We did not say anything else. I wanted to be clear that Boston is not requiring it for this group. Do you want to still be in that place of approval?
Okay.
When we made the motion last time, did we mention the vaccine in the motion?
No.
So we approved the trip, but the underlying understanding was that it was there.
Correct.
Right.
There was
So
discussion at the
we don't make a
meeting.
motion tonight, the trip is still approved.
Correct. It
Correct.
sounds like if we took no action.
Correct.
Then,
Right.
no, okay.
Yeah, so
Do other people
I-
have questions? Michelle?
So I think they should go. I don't have any problem with that, but I do believe that if that one student who is unvaccinated is going to be sleeping overnight in a room with 2 other students, that the student and the parents of those students have the right to know that situation and to potentially opt out of having their student room with that other student, and I don't know how you would navigate that.
So I can't answer that, but one thing I'm thinking of is that by having this conversation, certainly the members attending would know that it would be possible for someone to attend who is not vaccinated, so the parents would know that.
But they wouldn't know if
They would not know who, you're correct, but they would know that that is a possibility. They would.
Yeah, and it would be, to me, quite harmful for someone not to go for fear that they might be paired with that person in a room. And it seems, I just feel that that one person might be taking away the rights of many others if we, don't have some sort of requirement that that one person rooms alone, that one person rooms with only people who know that they're being roomed with that person. I don't know what it looks like.
All right. Do I have other people that want to?
Yeah. My
Jen?
concern is that we have already approved field trips with where we required vaccines. We required vaccines for the ski trip. These ski trips going on right at the same time as DECA. I don't think we can require vaccines for skiers and not for people going to DECA. It's unfair.
Anybody else? Anna?
You said it's one student for
I
sure?
don't know that we know for sure, right? There is at least one.
There's at least one student.
And how many total students are wanting to go?
Oh, probably 100, right?
It's under 100. Yeah.
I mean, I do feel like Dr. Carr raises a really good point about fairness. I mean, it's fundamentally a conflict within our own policy, which I don't.
I mean, it's a huge conference. I mean, it is
Yep.
huge conference center. Like, you're up in the balcony, and the kids are all down in the ballroom, and it's probably 2 or 3 ballrooms in size. So there's going to be a lot of people there.
Yeah. I guess I would offer my thoughts, which is that when it was presented to us, I think Eric said it pretty eloquently, that at that time, it was hard to imagine, even though it wasn't very long ago, it was hard to imagine that the vaccination mandate would be lifted, and things have changed rapidly. We did not make that a requirement at the time.
At the time, it was a requirement.
Correct.
Right, that's why I brought it back.
No,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
I just, for my own thinking, I'm just sharing my own thoughts, which while I do see both sides, I am mindful of that the situation is changing. I'm just making sure, Julia, I can't really, I'm just making sure you're okay. Okay, right. All right, Anna?
This is, I guess, a question a little bit for Michelle Bailey, but also for the committee. Is the primary concern the overnight sharing of a bedroom? Because I think during the day, there's really no way to control who else they're mingling with during the day. So would it be possible to say that if that student who's unvaccinated would like to attend, that they either have to stay in a room on their own, or potentially only go for the day and maybe don't stay overnight, which I recognize. I mean, I feel like I don't want to deny that student's ability to go, but I share Michelle's concern. It seems a bit unfair. It seems a bit unfair to force somebody to share a hotel room with someone who's unvaccinated without really knowing. That's a step farther for me.
Since I think we've established that if we were to do nothing this evening, the field trip would go as planned. So at this point, I think I'm going to pause and ask whether anyone has a motion or not.
Oh, maybe, right? I mean,
Maybe what?
Maybe a motion.
maybe we should, because, I mean, this is it, right? It's no simple answer.
David, can you speak into the
Moving the goalposts.
Can you speak into the microphone?
They keep moving the goalposts, and we have to sit here and try and, legislate around this. Obviously, you don't want to single out a student, but at the same time, you don't want to leave them back, and you don't want to put any other students at risk without their consent and knowledge. Maybe the answer is changing the wording of the permission slip to allow all participants to know in writing, because, I mean, there's people watching tonight, but everyone's not watching tonight, so just saying that we're having this discussion is putting it out there isn't enough. I think we do need to just sort of let them, I think we open the doors, right? I do think we open the doors, but I think at the same time, that has to come with an updated permission slip stating that, you know, this will be vaccinated, unvaccinated at the time. You know, we're probably looking at a maskless event at that point, right? This is the world we're moving into, right? So we want to get there. Are people there yet? You know, that's up for them to decide, right? So I think that's how we take that off of the best way we can sort of do what we can do, right? To not make the decisions for them, but make sure that they have all the information they need to make the best decisions for themselves. And I think that's the way we go around this. I don't think we deny anybody the right to go there, but we do have to make them aware of these changing goalposts and just let them know, right? There's no good, there's no right, there's no wrong, but we want to make sure we're doing our job and letting them know that everything is changing, and, you know, just let them know that it's, you know, it's on them, and make sure that we're giving them all the facts that we have at any given time.
So I guess my,
I have a motion.
was there a motion
I have a
in there?
motion.
Like, is there? Go ahead.
I move that we continue to allow all Hamilton Wenham students to who have qualified to participate in DECA state competition. With regards to overnight stays, we will only allow vaccinated students to stay overnight. In the case of an unvaccinated student, that student must disclose their status before being assigned a room or choose to commute.
Are we in violation of HIPAA?
It's a, no, it's not, it's a, not a school event, and they
Okay,
would not be
but
disclosing.
hold on, we don't have a second yet. Are we?
I'm a second.
Second, Michelle Horgan.
I'd like to amend the motion. I'd like to add an additional stipulation to the options to commute, disclose status, or stay in a room by themselves at their expense.
I see that as a friendly amendment.
Sorry?
I see that as a friendly amendment.
Yeah.
Very
Okay.
friendly. Yes, sorry.
Okay. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, I'm still, I don't think we want to take ownership of this.
Yeah,
I think we want to be the educators here, not the taskmasters.
So, I mean,
I mean, you know how I'm going to vote now, but like,
yeah, well, you're saying, I mean, I guess what I want to make sure I understand what you're saying is that you are,
I think we should be giving everybody the opportunity, but making sure that through a signed permission slip, that we're giving them the information, all the information they need to know. You do not need to be vaccinated anymore to be here. You do not need to wear a mask. Like, everything has changed since we did the last vote, and that's fine, right? Because again, this is where we're moving forward. But some people are not, you know, we're not all getting there at the same time. We just want to make sure that they're all on the same page. Right. The person who's unvaccinated, right? Everyone probably knows who they are. They're all friends. They're probably sleeping over each other's houses anyway. But from our standpoint, right, being legally responsible for the district, don't touch it, other than just making sure that everybody's aware of the changed guidelines.
So I just want to make sure that, I feel like that's similar to what I said earlier when I said, well, if we told everyone that you no longer need to be required to be vaccinated, then all the parents and all the students would know that it is possible that unvaccinated people are attending.
I think I'm taking it a step further, right? We're not just telling people, we're actually having them sign off on it.
So it would just, right, so it's formally telling them, okay, thank you, okay. All right. That would be different than the motion on the...
Julia's on.
Julia.
Hi. So things have been a little muffled. I just want to make sure, first of all, I understand 100% the motion on the table. Also, I just want to make sure, to Jen's point, that there is a standard protocol across all overnights, across all extracurriculars, so it does not look like it's arbitrary and that we're kind of picking and choosing. So maybe that was put on the table and I missed it, but I still don't understand exactly what the motion is.
So the motion,
Instead of saying everybody has to be vaccinated, we would say that anyone who is unvaccinated either cannot stay overnight or they have to disclose their status to the people they would be rooming with. Or stay in their own room.
Yeah.
At their expense.
Okay.
Okay, and this is a policy we can revisit in a few months if things are changing.
Of course.
I didn't hear what she said. Julia, can you say that again? I couldn't hear you.
I just hope that these are policies we can continually revisit as things are changing. And I also wonder, I think Jen asked this question, are we in violation of privacy policies?
No, this doesn't fall under, strangely enough, it doesn't fall under HIPAA.
No.
No.
Okay.
I have a.
Because I think that the answer there is, Julia, that it wouldn't be the district disclosing that information. The person would have to disclose it themselves. All right, I'm going to entertain a couple more, and then I think we can...
I just have a point of order. I do not believe that my amendment ever was seconded.
Oh, I think that Michelle said it was friendly, right?
Okay.
Does that not count?
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Great. It's friendly, so it is the motion now.
Yes, that is the motion on the table. Okay, Jen?
If we change this for DECA, I move that we make it applicable to all Hamilton Wenham students. Otherwise, it's,
Oh, yeah, okay.
otherwise
Now we
you're
have a
saying
money
it's,
amendment.
you can't go on a ski
Okay,
trip because you're.
Jen, before we get a second to that, could I ask
I'm not
that-
making a motion, I'm just saying, like, in fairness, we can't say
Okay,
to one group this and to another group something different.
I just don't want to put it into this same motion is what
No, I don't
like
either.
that I think makes it complicated, but we can, okay, are we ready to vote? Michelle?
Yeah, I agree with Jen that it should be consistent. I also believe that as things are evolving, that we can have different decisions at different times. And so at this time, this is the right thing for that event that's going to happen later. And I do agree with Jen that if there are still ski trips coming up later on here in March, then we should consider lifting that.
Okay. Are we ready to vote on the motion at hand? So I just want to be clear that I think everyone understands what the motion is if you vote yes.
Voting on the amendment first.
Oh,
Well, I think,
I thought procedurally that if the person accepted it, that it
I
was...
think it's one motion altogether, personally.
You say, then I'm going with you.
What I was going to say is I think we're all clear on what the motion at hand is if you vote yes. If you vote no, I want to be clear that my understanding would be that that is basically taking no action, and the field trip is just as is, and everyone, we didn't specify that you needed to be vaccinated, and so you could just, everyone could attend. Everyone clear? Okay.
No, hold on, I want to just clarify. So a vote yes is a vote to enable potentially all vaccinated and unvaccinated students to participate, with some stipulations for unvaccinated students to have to disclose their status.
Correct.
And a vote no is just going with how it is, which means everyone needs to be vaccinated.
Say that again? It means everyone what?
Everyone has to be vaccinated.
A vote no would mean going with the status quo how it is, where everyone needs, all the students need to be vaccinated.
No.
No, that's not correct.
No.
So the way it is now is that the vaccination was not addressed at all.
Oh, okay.
So it would not be a part, your vaccination status would be irrelevant, and everyone could go, and there would be no, okay.
Okay.
All right? Are we ready to vote? Okay. All right, all those in favor?
Has to be a roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry, what? All right, let's start in the middle. Let's start with Anna.
I vote yes.
Jen.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Julia.
No.
David.
No.
Dana's a no. All right, so that is 4-3, and the motion passes. Eric, do you feel like you've got clarity on what we need to do?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Do we have to talk about nationals too?
Yep. All right, thank you.
So
All right, so are you ready to move on to nationals, or you still want to talk about this?
I
Okay.
make sure that we were.
Okay, thank you. You both got my back here. Okay, so we're going to talk about the national DECA field trip, which is under the consent agenda. It's got an exhibit there. All right, Eric, I'm going to turn that over to you.
Okey-doke. So the state trip, which was approved and reapproved, is the second level of competition outside of our local group. So just under 100 kids were able to attend the states based on their scores and their awards. And after that's done, which is March 10th through 12th, I believe, another round will occur in Atlanta, Georgia, with a smaller group of kids, depending on how they score at the state level and whether or not they're eligible to move forward to the national level. So this permission form is for the national level in Atlanta, Georgia, and it'd be a smaller group. I think it's important to know that it's a smaller group of students.
It's a smaller group, but we actually still send a
We
pretty.
still send a huge number. Yeah, they do a great job.
Well, it's in the teens. It's less than 20. It's less than 20 usually. It's in the teens.
Okay.
And there's also the same requirements, 8-to-1 chaperones, so they'll just add chaperones as, depending on the number. And then kids pay for a portion of their share to go.
Okay. All right, questions from the committee?
Do we need to approve this tonight? Like, is there a time? Like I love the end of April date. I think life is
Could
going to be
wait.
so much grander then, but, you know, as we just witnessed, having to revote a vote we took 2 weeks ago, everything is changing so much, like.
I think this allows her to make hotel reservations
All right.
And-
No.
Flights.
and flights, which is kind of an important thing.
So my trepidation here is whether we just do a blanket yes, right, which is what we want to do, and then be able to like refine something if we need to later, or do you go the other way, right, and sort of put something with some stricter guidelines now that's easier to open up as you go?
I believe I don't think I've ever had to do it, but I believe in the past there have been times when international trips have had to come back because political situations happen overseas and there needs to be conversations about whether, so, I mean, situations can always change.
Even domestic,
Say that again, Michelle.
The school committee canceled a trip to New York shortly after, well, not shortly after, it was in the spring, after 9/11. So it's not just international, I mean, it can be a national thing can happen. I mean, anything can happen.
All right, I just wanted to say it wouldn't, like, it wouldn't be impossible for us to revisit it, even if we did, like you said, a blanket, just yes. Eric?
I can add it to the work plan too, just so that we know we're going to review it on that first meeting in April and have it at least right there, so we don't miss it.
You know, like, I think we're all hoping that everything's just, you
Yeah.
know, with the floodgates are opening now, but, you know, at the same time, we want to make sure that we're covering our bases, so. You know, and again, that's, I'm in full support of this. I just want to make sure that I'm supporting it the best way that I can and that we can. So.
Yeah, does that feel helpful to have Eric put it on just on the work plan for a future date, which, again, we may or may not even need by then?
If you approved it tonight with the intention that it would be returned back on the first meeting of April for review.
Right. And again, it could just be, yeah, it could be a non-issue by then. So, Michelle Horgan?
Can we approve it with the pieces we've put in place for the Boston trip?
Which
knowing
was?
that we're going to come back in April and hopefully amend it?
Meaning the motion that just passed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We'll have to make a motion, I think, to do, but we don't have a motion on the table, I don't think, right now.
No.
Michelle?
So this is in the future, not really that far in the future, but in the way that our lives have lived for the last few years, really kind of a far distance in the future. And I personally feel like if we approve this now, we're approving it under the conditions that we approve now. So if we approve it to go now, and there's probably no mask mandate in Atlanta, and there's probably no vaccination requirement in Atlanta, then we wouldn't have to necessarily review it later because it wouldn't be changing. You know what I mean? I don't feel like we have to review it if we approve it if it doesn't change. Whereas Boston, when we approved it, then the conditions changed. So I personally feel like at this point, parents would be making the decision on whether or not to send their own children under the conditions that would pretty much be you're taking on the risk, not us.
Yeah.
Okay. We should be aware that currently there is over 10% community transmission and a 25% positivity rate for COVID-19 in Georgia. It's one of the highest states in the nation.
I laughed because I loved the date, and then I saw where it was. Oh my God.
Yeah, I know, I did too. And we're sending kids down there with no mask mandate and no vaccine mandate when the percentage is higher than when we would have, at what we would have put masks on in the schools. Or David's suggested number.
I mean, I think I'm just going to go back to what I said about the last one. I think that we don't get in the way of this, and I think we do our best of making sure that everybody knows exactly what the situation is to the best of our current knowledge and ability, and that all goes into the permission slip.
Yep.
Okay. I think at this point, I would take a motion so that we can.
I move that we accept the proposal to allow students to go to the DECA National Tournament or competition.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Michelle Bailey.
Can I just add an amendment to review it in let's say 2 meetings, right? That'd bring us to mid-March.
All right, so the amendment is just going to, yeah, I'm just looking at our schedule. You're saying maybe March 17th?
St. Patrick's Day.
All right, is there a second for the amendment?
Second.
Having a meeting on St. Patrick's Day.
Okay. All right, the amendment has been seconded, so I think we need to vote on the amendment. Is there discussion on the amendment? Are we ready to vote? Julia?
Yes.
You know you're just voting on the amendment, correct?
Oh,
On
the
whether-
amendment was the March.
You're just voting on whether to amend.
Yes.
Okay, David?
Yes.
I'm a no.
I'm a yes.
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 Michelle Bailey?
No.
Okay, and so that is 5-2, and the motion to amend passes. So the motion on the table is to approve the National DECA state competition with a, that we will review it again on March 17th. Okay, does anyone have any further discussion? All right, let's start with Michelle Bailey.
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Jen?
No.
Yes.
Dana is a yes. David?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Okay, and that is 6-1, and the motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Next up.
Evaluation discussion.
Okay, so I have some. We're going to have just a discussion, basically on the sort of the way, the nuts and bolts. A lot of this is really calendar related on how the evaluation plan is going to work. I'm going to offer up my thoughts, and then we can have a discussion about what y'all think of what I'm going to say. Eric and I have talked. I've talked to Dorothy about, how this evaluation process should and could look. So what I'm looking at is potentially on the 3rd of March, a formative conversation. So at that meeting, we would ask Superintendent Tracy to provide evidence and artifacts, and we would, of course, this would be partial evidence, a partial submission, because, of course, he began his tenure on October 1st, and this is a shortened year. But he would provide us this partial evidence submission, and it would give us something at that meeting to discuss. Again, this is just my thoughts. I'm willing to be open, but I want to kind of go through this, and then you guys can give me your thoughts and discuss. That would be a conversation. It would not be a written evaluation. It would be a conversation to provide him with feedback, ask questions, and give direction as to what we're seeing and what we're looking for. I also spoke with Dorothy about tentatively having Dorothy come for a brief, possibly half an hour, workshop as potentially on the 17th. As part of this conversation, that might be that I might ask that we start a little bit early on that night to talk about just how to do an evaluation. Again, this is all just putting it out there. There were questions posed to me as part of this about how we would handle evaluations for the summative evaluation for departing or potentially departing members. So what I would say, and this was in consult with Dorothy, that what we would ask is that in this timeline, that by election day, all departing or potentially departing members would provide their written evaluation of the superintendent up until that day. If a member were then actually re-elected, that member could therefore then amend or add to their evaluation after, because they would continue to be on the board. If not, those departed members could be invited when we did do the summative evaluation to invited to the board to participate in that conversation as participants, but they would not be able to vote on the compilation. Okay, so that would be Election Day, which is the 7th of April. I'm presenting that May 19th would be a good day to have the summative evidence presented to the committee. A week later, on the 26th of May, would be the deadline for the committee to complete their written evaluations. Again, these evaluations would be expected to be not as detailed as they're briefer due to the fact that the term began on October 1st, but still, that's a week to complete that. And then finally, on the giving me 1 week to compile would be June 2nd would be a discussion and vote on the compilation. I have one more calendar thing in there, but just generally, I'd like some feedback on what the committee thinks. And Eric, if you wanted to add anything. I don't know. Thoughts? Anna?
Thank you, Dana. I like the idea very much of having anyone who, well, in this case, we know our 2 Michelles will definitively not be on the committee again. I like the idea of inviting you back and having that feedback, so I support that idea very much, and I don't mind the overall timeline. My question is, if Eric is not going to provide any written evidence until May 19th, and we're talking about having the written reports from Michelle and Michelle on election day, I'm not quite sure what evidence they would be using other than whatever was presented on the 3rd. So I think I'm fine with it, but I think I'd like to know maybe a little bit from them who've been through it more, like, do you feel like you could actually complete a written evaluation in the absence of written evidence?
Yeah, and before I might ask Eric, I think you might have thoughts on that. I'm not sure. We're all kind of new at this particular scenario.
When Dana and I talked about this the other day, I had anticipated submitting a formative evidence batch, which is usually kind of a little bit of everything, but not everything. At some time either on the 3rd or the 17th. It almost makes sense to have it ready for one of those 2 days so that people can go through it and digest it, and it doesn't matter to me. I'm not hung up on it. I've already been doing it as I've been going, so realistically, I can submit it then, and then in the May date, go back and continue to add to it so that everybody has now the full scope of the things that would be submitted based on the original goals.
I'm not sure, but did that answer your question? Because I think Anna was worried
I think it's fine with me. I just want to make sure this plan is okay with the shells. I think really the rest of us, I have no objection of any kind to what you've described, but before we move forward, I want to make sure that the 2 Michelles feel like it's adequate.
I mean, having gone through it last year, if this were my first evaluation, I'd say, whoa, but since I went through it last year, I think that's fine. It's obviously going to be of what's been presented the last 6 months, but it'll be enough to carry through.
Michelle?
I think you're setting yourself up to not get things done on time. I don't think a week is enough time for committee members to complete a thorough evaluation, and I don't think you have enough time in a week to compile,
So I'm going to start with the first part of that, is that your concern is that committee members don't have enough time to complete. You're saying a week is not enough time. I will say that
It doesn't affect me.
Say it again?
It won't affect me, because mine would be due much earlier.
I will say that I actually posed that exact question to Dorothy, and she said, and again, this is, I have not done this job for this before. Dorothy said to me, if you give people 2 weeks, they will do it at the last minute. If you give people 1 week, they'll do it at the last minute. If you give people a year, they'll do it at the last minute. That was what Dorothy said. My goal by doing it now is that people know that they don't just have a week, they have, I understand that they get the evidence, but that people are aware. But I appreciate the feedback that one of the things that could be is that, we could stretch that out on the end. We do have, and Eric and I discussed, there is an extra week there. We do have one more meeting in June. Having it completed, I think I generally try to plan so that, as we've seen this year, sometimes something goes awry, and so it's wise to have an extra little wiggle room in case something happens. Anna?
I think knowing that week is going to be what it is, I'm just going to put it in my calendar and block it off, so I appreciate the advance notice. There's one part of this that we haven't talked about, which is any incoming members
Yes.
Would they be able to vote at all? Because in the event that we have 3 brand-new members, we would only barely have a quorum.
Thank you. I had that and I sort of held it to the end and then I didn't say it. So the answer to that is, so new members, Dorothy said this committee could decide, but new members could, as Julia remembers, there are very specific rules. You could have a new member write an evaluation based only on their time on the committee. I will say, and this is a little bit complicated, I don't want to spend forever on it, but it's a little bit complicated. If you look at the calendar, if you had the calendar in front of you, which I do, that April 7th is election day. The following meeting, the first meeting that we would have, is actually scheduled right now for April vacation, which is the 21st. So that is an issue that I don't know whether that's really going to happen, and that would mean that those new members, we have to think about that, that's another issue. But if those new members were to start, we really would only be looking at, a week or two that they would be able to speak to. And, Dorothy's counsel and frankly mine would be that it wouldn't really be appropriate for them to submit an evaluation. It was very different than Julia, who came in December and really had to follow very strict guidelines about not speaking to anything that occurred before she was on the committee, but she still had months that she was able to speak about.
And my memory is that Jen didn't participate at all.
I wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
Correct. And I believe it was, I don't know how long you were between the time you were elected and the...
I think 2 meetings?
Right. So I think we're talking about a similar time frame.
Yeah.
Right, a similar time frame.
Something like that?
Right. So actually, that's actually really helpful because that provides us with sort of past practice that and that's kind of what I'm saying, that it wouldn't really be appropriate for those people to evaluate. Michelle?
So I know that Mary Beth's contract said that her review had to be in May. What does Eric say?
I don't know.
I believe it says annually, but I will look it up. Actually, I have it right here.
It just says annually?
Annually.
Okay.
So I don't, that was a lot. I don't know whether there's I heard Michelle's concern that this is not enough time. I want to hear from other people whether they feel like they can write this evaluation in a week. Does that feel overwhelming?
Dana, just a point.
Not that week.
That week is not overwhelming, or that week?
Oh, no, that week is extremely overwhelming.
Just as a point of information, on point 6 of the contract, it says, performance evaluation, the superintendent will be evaluated annually in accordance with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Schools evaluation process for superintendents, including but not limited to a formative and summative assessment, 603 CMR 3505.
Okay, all right, so we don't have a specific date.
So we don't have to worry about a date.
This is why I brought this for a discussion, is I certainly can push it back with given Michelle's and Jen's. That will put us, just so you know, at our very final school committee meeting. So it doesn't give us a wiggle room, if I push it back. So that would look like the summative evidence would be presented on the same day, the 19th of May, but the compilation the deadline wouldn't be until the 6th. The 2nd of June. 2 weeks.
That's much easier.
Okay. All right.
And then the evaluation would be
On the 19th or 16th,
whatever
it is, of June. It's the 16th. Yep. Okay, I'm just writing that down. Okay.
Nina, how far in advance do we need to change that meeting that's on vacation?
Yeah, so it might be me talking to myself that maybe that's a topic for a future meeting. Maybe we can bring that.
Okay.
I can bring that maybe to the next meeting.
Topic for future meeting.
But it's all on your, just be mindful that that is something we need to think about. Do we, want to have that meeting? And if we want to move it, do we want to move it the week before or the week after, or no? But that is April vacation, which is also really important because it would be the first meeting that new members would attend. So we do want to get that on the calendar so that they are clear when the first meeting would especially if it's going to be an off week.
And it will be a religious holiday. It'll be Maundy Thursday.
Thursday, the 21st?
No, the week before.
The week before would be.
Yeah.
The week before would be.
14th is Holy Thursday.
Correct. But
Yeah, so if you
but
change
the
it
week
to the
after
week
would
before,
not.
it would be a
Right.
religious holiday, so
Right.
you should really be careful about that.
Yes, thank you. No, you're correct about that. Yes. Right, and it is currently scheduled on Passover, but it's also scheduled on school vacation, so it might not be the ideal time for that meeting. Okay. All right, are we feeling, got what you need, you think? Yep. Okay. Okay.
Actually, one thing.
Yep, Eric?
I'm going to do the first submission on the 3rd. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes, everybody good with the very first submission, which is on the 3rd, and we'll just, that's our next meeting. It would just be a conversation.
Yeah, I'll just do a quick presentation and leave you with the evidence and a mountain of links and things.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you all, I appreciate that conversation. All right, next up.
Excuse me, Dana, can I just ask if Chris wants to leave? If you want to go home.
At any point, if you want to depart, we'll understand.
He doesn't have any homework.
Though you're perfectly welcome to stay, we like having you here.
I don't think I have any homework.
If he doesn't mind, I mean, I guess we've heard your report about the Mass, but when we get to that part of it, I wouldn't mind actually having you here, if you don't mind.
All right, thank you. Okay, next up is, this is a discussion of a letter to the Attorney General regarding our website issue, and Michelle Bailey was gracious enough to write this up. I guess I'll first, I did find a couple.
There's a
typos. I'm going to just quickly say those, and then I want to just bring it open to any discussion or questions that people have on the floor. So if Michelle, if you're willing to do, is the person's name Han, H-A-N-N-E, or her name is, I'm just making sure she wasn't.
That's her
Han.
name.
As a point of clarification, Eric and I went back and did a little research, and the correct number of days that we were unable to have a meeting is 8.
Okay.
So we agreed on that, right? That, yeah. So we were unable to meet for 8 days, and that's in a couple places. And then I had a couple just quick typos that we can adjust, but I didn't think I have anything else that was factual. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about the letter, whether we are comfortable with the letter, about the website situation? Anna?
I think the letter is really great. Thank you, Michelle, for doing this. I think, and I did find a couple little typos, which are non-substantive. I think my only question is, I feel like at the end, so the request is to correct the deficiency in the regulations, which I feel like is not really going to get any traction whatsoever. I almost feel like I would like a more concrete ask of saying, you know, more specifically, is there any other option other than to correct the deficiency in the regulations? Because it's really just pointing out this is a problem and asking them to change the law, which I feel like is going to move like cold molasses in the snow. I mean, that's just not going to go anywhere. So would we want to add a sentence that says something, you know, in the event that this is not fine, is can you please advise of some other path which we could have handled this better? Just to sort of put their feet on the fire a little more, because it's outrageous what happened, and we were lucky that it was fixed. So that would be my only suggestion, is to add another request.
So I'm going to jump right in and say, I kind of felt like that's what, I mean, I feel like that's what it says, is that we would have wanted, there's no guidance on what to do. I don't know that that's requiring them to change the law. There's just no guidance on what we should do. Like, there was no, I mean, I think that's what we're asking for, right, is emergency procedures. I mean, I guess I'm just not quite sure what you would, how it would be different, what you're really.
I would maybe just say, you know, in the interim, while consideration of changes in regulations are considered, do you have a specific other resolution that we could pursue? or something like that. I mean, if you feel like it's redundant, I just feel like, I think it's a little bit rhetorical, the questions. I think they're good and funny rhetorical. You know, they end by saying, what if our website could not be recovered? Would we never be able to meet again? Like, I think it's a good rhetorical question, but I think I would rather like to anchor it in something concrete. So instead of so maybe right after that say, in the event that the law cannot be changed, if this were to happen again, what specifically do you advise that we do?
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
I know we use our website as our primary posting area, but could we get around this by having 2 places that we post?
So, no.
Okay, that
You
was my
cannot.
question.
You cannot have a backup. You could, however, if you wanted to, explore with your legal counsel an alternative post. Like, we could choose to make a posting, let's say, at the bulletin board outside. There are, though, I think, reasons why every single regional school district has their website. Every regional school district has the same as we do. So I would be hesitant to just sort of say, well, while in the middle of this, I very much wanted to change it to the bulletin board. I would be hesitant to do that without consulting.
I just didn't know if we could post in 2 locations.
I asked that question, and no. You can post it as many places as you want.
But there's only one of
There's only one, yes.
So my experience is, so Ms. Rush is the representative from the, I don't know if it's a department or division of open government or open meeting law. She's the representative that goes to the commission that hears the report from them each year. They are the people who monitor changes that are needed, and they are the people who advise the legislature on changes. I personally wrote to them once about, a definition of an intentional violation, and they did afterwards come up with one. I wasn't the only one who asked, but I do find that they're responsive. Maybe they were more responsive in the past than they are now, because when the law was new, there was more work to be done. But, that's why this is also CC'd to our representatives, because if it's determined the law is deficient, then, it's up to them to decide what to do about it. They could do nothing. But, ransomware is kind of a big thing right now, so, it seems like.
And, well, I actually think we're all trying to get to the same place. We're all trying to say the same thing.
Yeah.
But to me, this is the very end here. This is what I really was in the heat of it. The requests, the regulations to be addressed to provide emergency posting procedures in the event that a website or building is inaccessible. That really was exactly that's very specifically what I really was looking for. And so I understand Anna's point is that, this says in order to change, you have to change the regulations, and you're maybe saying, just give us, but I think that really hit the nail on the head for me, that is what I was looking for when I was calling the Attorney General, is I was looking for emergency posting procedures, and there were none.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you hit the nail on the head with that, is what, okay.
Are you looking for like a motion and a vote to send
I don't
it?
know. Do we need a vote? I guess we do.
Well, I think you need to know if the committee supports you in sending that.
Yeah, yes, it's my name at the bottom of this, so I guess maybe that's all that I just need. I'm comfortable with this letter. I feel like it's well written and addressing exactly what my concerns were during this particular incident. So I guess, I'm looking for the committee to give me that you're comfortable with me going ahead and sending this letter. I'm seeing generalized nodding. I guess we could vote. I don't know.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move that we authorize Chair Dana Alera to send the letter presented in the exhibit to the Attorney General's office, subject to the minor typographical changes and correction of the date of duration the ransomware attack was present, as discussed.
Second.
Second by Jen Carr. All right. Are we done discussing? Okay. Julia?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Dana's yes. Anna?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
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 All right, and that is unanimous, and the motion passes. Thank you all very much, and thank you very much, Michelle Bailey, for your work on that.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, next up, we have a vote on the universal free lunch resolution. We had a good discussion about this at our last meeting. Jen, would you be willing to start us off with a motion so that we have that on the table?
Just pulling that up. Sorry, my internet's slow. Whereas Hamilton Wyndham Regional School District School Committee, whereas the cost of school meals for low-income children has long been a barrier to proper nutrition, and as the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated hunger, 23% of households with children are now experiencing food insecurity, and schools have traditionally used means of testing to determine who qualifies for school lunch, but means of testing can be invasive and fails to capture and address the needs of students whose families barely exceed income limits and who struggle to pay for even reduced price school meals, and federal waivers during the pandemic have provided free meals at all school sites that are open to everyone to ensure students do not go hungry, and have successfully demonstrated that means testing is not necessary. And the H.714 and S.314 bills, an act relative to universal school meals, would strip away means testing in schools and make school meals free to all students. And having reliable access to free school meals will not only enhance a child's academic performance, but protect their physical and mental health as well, while removing the stigma around students' economic status, creating a more equitable educational environment. Now, therefore, be it that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District School Committee go on record supporting H.714 and S.314, an act relative to universal school meals, and be it further that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District School Committee Secretary be and hereby is requested to forward suitably engrossed copies of this resolution to the entire Massachusetts State Delegation on behalf of the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District.
Okay, we need a...
Second?
Yes, second. Yeah, second. Okay, second by Anna Siedzik. So the motion on the table is to vote to approve this. We have had, well, is there any further discussion? Michelle Bailey.
So I'm still a little uncomfortable with understanding how this will get paid for, but how do we currently determine if our students are economically disadvantaged, and how would this affect our ability to qualify for Title I funds if we're not collecting data around that and stuff?
So it's still the requirement to collect the data. We give each student and family the form for free or reduced lunch, and it's based on returns. It's also based on kids that we find. You know, if we find during the year that child isn't eating lunch or accessing the lunch program, and you know, we can make that connection as well. So there are two different ways.
But if now everybody is free.
If everybody got free, I don't know how the state would manage that, but I'm sure they would come up with 4 different ways for us to dig for the data. They definitely find lots of ways for us to find that data, so.
Yeah, because I think it was Brockton, all of a sudden went from not having having a ton of kids that were economically disadvantaged to not having a ton, because they were offering free meals to everyone, and so that put them at what they believed to have been a significant funding disadvantage. So I'm a little concerned. The devil's in the details, and I don't think we have the details about how a good thing is going to interact with other things. And so I just feel a little uncomfortable around that.
Other people? Anyone else?
I guess, can I ask?
Yeah.
I am correct that Title I funds come through economic disadvantage. And
And
so,
they shift, as you know, ours shifted this year,
yeah,
so it can move as well around the district.
right. Okay.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? All right. Looks like we're ready to vote. Okay. Let's see. All those in favor, oh, no, I'm sorry. We'll start with you, Jen.
Yes.
Anna.
Yes.
Dana's yes. David?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
All right. And Michelle?
Yes.
All right. And the vote is unanimous and the motion passes. Okay. All right. Next up, I sent some information to all of you. The negotiations committee worked last night on the potential warrant article and the regional agreement, and you all should, did everybody have that information? Did everyone receive that? Yes? Yes? Okay. So the purpose of the proposed amendments, we were looking only at section 1 of the regional agreement, and the purpose was to look at our election procedures and to align our election procedures with current state law. So what you have is 3 items. You have the tracked copy, which shows all the changes. You'll see that most of the changes involved crossing out large, complicated sections of scenarios that our lawyer basically just said, you know, this is not the way agreements are typically written anymore, that these are, that what we really need to do is just sort of allow the Massachusetts state law to be followed. And you also got a clean copy so that it's easier to read, and a copy of what the warrant article would look like. So I'm going to open it up to questions and thoughts. Oh, I should say that the negotiations committee has worked on this. We've worked with Mark Terry, we worked with the town clerks, and the negotiations subcommittee recommends favorable action on this. Yes.
Can I just add, because we don't have a exhibit here?
Yes.
Basically, the agreement would change to say, we will have the town clerks follow the law, and we'll hold our elections on the same days so that we can meet the law. And that's basically what it says.
Yeah. So basically, our agreement was written, we think, in the 1950s, and the things were just different then. The agreement was written, it appears that the agreement was written under the assumption that Hamilton and Wenham would not hold elections at the same time. And because that is no longer true, all of this complicated things about how to hold the elections in 2 separate times are just no longer necessary. And in fact, our town clerk's feedback were that it is, much of it is no longer following the state statutes. Okay.
And it makes it much shorter.
It makes it much shorter.
There's not multiple pages, it's like little paragraphs.
It's much shorter.
Yeah.
And if this were to be, if it were the will of the committee to put this onto the warrant, we would simultaneously send it to the Department of Education so that DECA can review it as is the correct procedure. So, all right, Anna.
I think it's great, and I applaud the work of the negotiations. I think the only thing I'd want to change are, and only as they pertain to section 1, that if we're going to sort of do some updating, I would remove the chairman, vice chairman, and just make it chair and vice chair. And I know that both.
I think that's on there.
It's on there once, but there's a second
We
sentence.
missed one. There was an edit, and then we missed one, and I did see that
Okay, yeah, so
afterwards,
just for section 1, and then the other thing is under vacancies. I know that both towns last year changed it to, instead of Board of Selectmen, I believe they changed it to Select Board. So if we're going to do gender neutral language in one spot, I feel like we should do it for the rest of the references in section 1. Right, was Select Board, right? Did Hamilton want to call
I
it
don't know
Select
if
Board?
Hamilton changed. Did they change
We
it?
did, we voted on a town meeting.
I will say, I do know we did remove the chairman and chair from one section, and I noticed that we missed one of them. Do other people have thoughts on that? The edit to Select Board and the removal of the okay. Anything else? Nope.
No.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Do we have a motion on the table?
I move that we accept the amended regional agreement as presented with the agreed upon changes suggested in today's meeting.
Hold on one second. No. Michelle Bailey, I need a little guidance. I think we really need to vote on to submit it as a warrant. Is that what we need to do?
Yeah, that we would authorize, that we probably should say that this is what we want
Yes.
that to be, and then we should also authorize you to submit it.
We have a motion to second, and then,
I second the motion.
all right, seconded by Anna Cizik. All right, so this is to approve the amendments, and then then we'll have a second motion to submit it as a warrant. Okay, let's start with Michelle Horgan.
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Dana is yes. David?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Michelle Bailey?
Yes.
Okay, and that is unanimous, and the motion passes. Jen, can we have a motion to submit the warrant to both towns?
Is there a particular wording I have to use?
Not that I know.
It's not like a bond thing. No. Yeah.
I move that we approve sending the revised regional agreement as a warrant to both towns for town meeting.
Second.
Second by Michelle Bailey. Is there further discussion? Okay, David?
Yes.
Dana, yes. Anna?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Michelle? Julia?
Yes.
Okay, and the motion, that is unanimous, and the motion passes. Thank you all. Okay, next up, finance and operations. We are tonight, Vinny is gonna, I think, looking for a little direction. Our assistant treasurer, Kevin Mahoney, is gonna be leaving us, or has left us already.
Yeah, has left
Has left
January 31st.
So Vinny's here to sort of get our direction in terms of moving forward on that matter. Vinny, do you have something to?
Yep. Just looking for a brief discussion on how the committee wants to handle the assistant treasurer vacancy. As you know, it's a school committee position, and I was curious if you want to handle it the same way we just handled the treasurer's vacancy, where my team will post the position, go through the resumes, interview candidates, and bring forward our top candidate for approval, or whether or not you guys want to be involved and go through the interviews, go through the resumes and interviews with us.
Okay. So as Vinny just mentioned, when we did this just not too long ago with the treasurer position, Vinny did come to us with a recommendation for us to vote upon. People have thoughts? Michelle?
I think it worked the last go-around, so stay the course.
I agree. I defer to Vinny's judgment and process, and I have no objection.
Okay.
Yep, I also agree.
Julia, go ahead. You agree?
I was just saying, I completely agree with that process. I think it was very efficient and effective.
Okay. Vinny, I'm feeling like the direction to the committee is please go ahead with the process
Okay.
as you did before and bring us a recommendation.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, thank you. All right, next up is you again, Vinny, FY22 year-end forecast.
Okay, tonight I'm here to present to you the FY22 year-end forecast as of the second quarter ending December 31st, 2021. So there are a few budget realities that I was facing while conducting my year-end forecast. To start with, only 50% of the fiscal year has passed, so a lot of things could change between January and June, obviously. At the same time, only 73 of the 180 school days have passed, or roughly 41% of the school year. One of the biggest budget realities I was facing was the prepayment of tuitions at the end of FY21 towards our FY22 out-of-district tuitions to the tune of roughly $1.1 million that I will get into more detail in a second. But if you think about that for a second, what we did was at the end of FY21, we used leftover money to prepay expenditures in FY22. So in theory, we freed up $1.1 million in funds in FY22. On top of that, and still related to out-of-district tuitions, we are actually seeing our actuals decrease this year. This was also reflected in the FY23 budget we just passed. If you remember, in that budget, I believe we reduced our forecasted out-of-district tuitions by approximately $500,000. This was in direct correlation to what we were seeing actually happen this year with our actual expenditures. In addition, another budget reality we were looking at was a decrease in our health insurance enrollment and our new hire placeholders, much like what I walked you through with the budget cycle about a month ago. In addition to that, there were two more budget realities we were facing, both around salary items. This year, we saw an unusually high teacher turnover rate, as well as unusually high vacant positions that I'm going to get into in more detail in a second. So just to give you the overall year-end forecast, right now I'm predicting that on June 30, we are going to end the year with approximately $2.9 million left over in expenditures. Here you can see it in DAC or location form, and on this slide you can see it in our DECA category form. So the first thing I'm going to go through with you here revolves around our salaries. So while conducting the forecast, I noticed that there were three major areas that were resulting in this surplus. They were around our vacant positions, around our salary scale advancement, otherwise known as our lane or column changes, and around our salary breakage, which is savings that resulted, again, from higher people on the salary scale leaving, whether it was resigning on their own accord, whether it was retiring unannounced at the end of the year, or whether they were terminated. The people we brought in came in at a lower salary, thus resulting in savings. Now, I know I'm using the word savings and surplus. Those, to me, are all positive things, but at the end of the day, this really isn't a positive thing. This is time students did not have in front of teachers. This is instructional services they did not receive, whether the position was vacant or whether it was a lower degree a teacher or a less seasoned teacher. So I know I'm using kind of positive terms, but really that's not what it is. At the end of the day, students are not receiving the full services that we anticipated and that we wanted to supply to them during the budget process. So I'm briefly going to walk through those three major areas that were resulting in salary savings. The first one is around our vacant positions. You've heard Eric tweet out a lot of the times that we still have a lot of vacant positions out there. Even today, as we speak, there are 10 positions I listed here that have been vacant the entire fiscal year, from July 1 all the way to the end of Q2, and most of these, even today, are still vacant. So in total, their annual salaries accumulate up to roughly $300,000. If you translate that just through Q2, from these 10 positions, we're realizing savings of roughly $160,000. Another way to look at it is, today we had school, these positions were not filled. Today alone, we saved $2,000 just from these 10 positions. They're still not filled. Tomorrow there's school, we're gonna save another $2,000 from these positions not being filled. Okay, so the next area around salary savings is around our salary scale advancement. December 1st of every year, employees are required to submit salary advancements forms to us for the following year. So I believe for FY22, we might have received around 30 applications. Only about 18 of them were fulfilled. So for whatever reason, these 12 employees did not fulfill their requirement, whether classes were canceled at college because of COVID or whether PD was not provided. Regardless, these 12 people did not submit their paperwork for salary advancement. Therefore, they did not get the salary bump that we had budgeted for, resulting in savings, again, of roughly $25,000. Next is the biggest item around salary, and that's our breakage. So right here, I tried to show you across the 5 schools and across the 3 subject areas where our savings are coming from. So you can then take this chart and look at the account detail, which I believe is Exhibit 2 on the school committee meeting, school committee agenda, and look up and tie out the numbers that are in that account detail. So just for instance, if you were to look at Cutler at the general ed teachers line, you'll see that there are savings there of at least $41,000. It's the top line right there. If you were to look at their special ed line, there would be savings of at least $34,000. Now, when I say at least, this chart here only represents their salary savings. So going from an M60 step 9 to maybe a master's step 2. This chart does not include any late hires, whereas the account detail would. So even though we might have brought a teacher in at a lower step, in some cases, we didn't bring them in till a week or 2 after school started. So the full account detail has the whole item, where this just has the savings from the step difference. But overall, between the 5 schools, there were 39 positions that turned over that result in savings or a deficit, but the net result was a savings of roughly $509,000. If I wanted to give you guys as much detail as I could, so I made a third exhibit, exhibit number 3. This details out almost 40 different positions that turned over throughout the year. You can go through line by line and see each instance where we either resulted in salary savings or a salary deficit. So I just kind of want to supply you with as much line by line detail as I could.
Does that include Our superintendent?
This chart specifically does not. This is
Okay.
just teachers.
Okay.
Yep. So that was my analysis around the salaries. The next, I'm going to move into our health insurance surplus. So as I mentioned during the budget cycle, when we build the budget, we always include health insurance costs for any vacant positions. When we built the FY22 budget, at that time, there were 25 vacant positions. For every single one of those positions, we budgeted health insurance, because that is a liability that might come true. More often than not, it doesn't, but we still have to cover the liability in case it does. On top of those 25 vacant positions, we had almost 40 other positions turn over. So in total, we saw a change of somewhere around 65 to 75 new employees. Out of all that change, from what we budgeted, we are down about 18 participants in total on our health insurance. So those 18 people alone are represented on the middle line here for savings of roughly $280,000 from people not enrolling. In addition to that $280,000, when we built the FY22 budget, we incorporated a premium rate increase of 7.5%. This is what we put in the January, February timeframe like we just did. But just because I put in 7.5% as our budget doesn't mean I stopped negotiating with Harvard Pilgrim. Over the next 3 months, I'm going to do it again this year, just like we did last year, where we negotiate the premium rate increase from basically February to just about around April or May is when we finally lock it down. So at the time, our health insurance consultants, as well as both the town of Hamilton and Wenham, we all kind of did the same rate, which was roughly 7.5%. But when I was done negotiating with Harvard Pilgrim, we signed a contract with a 3.5% increase. So that's a difference of about 4%, which resulted in savings just from the premium rate increase of roughly $108,000. On top of that, just like I mentioned before, we had a lot of late hires. We had more than 16 late hires, but out of all of our late hires, 16 of them applied for health insurance. So of those 16 people, because they were hired late, we didn't cover their health insurance day one. We only start covering their health insurance, obviously, their first day of school. So because of that, we saved roughly another $10,000 from the late hires enrolling in the health insurance. So when you roll up all three of those numbers, we're realizing a health insurance savings of just under $400,000. Like I said during the budget process, this is a little higher than normal, but we normally would have savings resulting from health insurance, and that mainly comes from budgeting for the 25 vacant positions. So this is normally where we realize our savings at the end of the year and where most of our E&D was generated in past budget cycles. The next big item that I want to walk through with you is out-of-district tuitions. I'm going to try to slow it down a little bit because I know this part's going to get a little confusing. So when we originally passed our FY22 budget, if you go look in the budget file, we had an approved FY22 total out-of-district budget after offsets of roughly $3.6 million. So that's what we were authorized to spend for out-of-district tuitions. On October 21st, after our Q1 forecast, I came to you and asked for budget transfers out of the out-of-district tuition lines. This was to cover the 1% additional COLA that wasn't included in our 22 budget. It was to cover the $500 COVID-19 payment, and it was to cover additional unbudgeted items that we went over during that school committee meeting. So after that night, we transferred out roughly that $600,000 in expenditures. So now we arrive at our adjusted out-of-district tuitions budget of roughly $2.9 million. So now that is kind of our starting point to what our budget is for out-of-district tuitions. So then you move into the expenditure part of it. So about 3 weeks ago, Stacy Busick, our Director of Student Services, supplied me with what her forecast was going to be for our total expenditures for out-of-district tuitions for FY22. The amount she gave me is roughly $3.6 million for the entire year. But remember, like I said before, we prepaid some of that, roughly $1.1 million. So out of that $3.6 million, we paid $1.1 million from last year's budget. Then you have to incorporate our circuit breaker. Circuit breaker is a state program that came around about 15, 20 years ago, I believe, where the state helps you cover out of tuition special ed costs for students. There are rules about how much you can roll over and how much you have to apply to your next year's budget. For Hamilton Wenham, it means that we have a mandatory circuit breaker offset of $1.1 million. This amount sits in our revolving account, which is separate from our general fund. Therefore, $1.1 million will not be charged to our general fund, but rather our revolving account. So at the end of the year, I'm estimating that $1.3 million is the amount of out-of-district tuitions that will eventually hit our general fund. So what does that mean? So we have our budget that I went over before at roughly $2.9 million, and we subtract out the final expenditures that will hit our general fund of roughly $1.3 million, is resulting in what I'm predicting as a year-end balance of roughly $1.6 million in out-of-district tuitions alone. I can stop and answer any questions if you have it, or, okay, beautiful. So just to summarize what I've gone over, from these 5 areas, we have $1.6 million in out-of-district tuitions, $510,000 from our salary breakage, roughly $400,000 from our health insurance, $167,000 from our vacant positions, and $25,000 from our column changes. Just from these 5 items alone, we're realizing a surplus of roughly $2.7 million at year end just from these 5 items alone. So at this point, I'd like to make a recommendation on what to do with this with the $2.9 million that I'm predicting to have at year end. So the first thing I would like your approval to do is aim to leave $770,000 on the table at the end of this year. So as you remember, during the budget process this year, we returned $770,000 to the town for the excess Chapter 70 from the prior year. My goal would be to backfill that $770,000 with this remaining balance. So as you remember, during the budget process, I always warned you guys about the cliff that will come next year because of that $770,000. You'll remember, maybe you'll remember, I had 2 slides up that night. I pointed out what the $770,000 was going to do. It resulted in roughly a predicted budget in FY24 of an 8% increase. In addition, the second slide that night was what would happen if we return the whole balance, excluding the OPEB that we put in this year. So the idea is to backfill that $770,000 one more year, resulting in pushing that cliff fall off one more year into 25. In addition to that, I'm requesting that we do a phase-in prepayment plan. Sorry, one second. Of, again, approximately $1.1 million. So the idea now here is kind of the same idea I had with OPEB, is put in expenditures this year, but now the difference is slowly decrease them over the next 3 years. So instead of having that immediate $1.1 million one-time revenue source in our next year's budget, split it up over the next 3 years. So the idea is next year, we have the $770,000 going back to our 24 budget. At the end of FY22, we would prepay $1.1 million, and then when FY23 rolled around, we would only prepay $550. This would result in the other half of it, $550,000, falling to E&D. So now you went from $770 to $550, a reduction of about $200,000 instead of that immediate reduction of $700,000. Then the following year, at the end of FY24, we would prepay roughly $250,000 and let $300,000 fall to E&D. So the other half of that $550,000 payment. Then at the end of FY25, we would prepay for the last time $250,000 and let that final amount fall to E&D and have it used for our FY27 budget. So again, the idea here is to not have that steep cliff fall in 1 year and slowly give the money back to the town so we don't see a 1-year budget that kind of balloons at the end of it. Okay, and then the final recommendation is to seek approval to spend funds in different budget areas, but I'm just gonna give you a moment to ask questions again unless you want me to move on. Okay.
Hold on a second.
Yep.
Julia, did you have a question?
Gives me a chance
I think
Oh,
not.
I didn't have a question. I just think it's so important, Vinny, what you said about differentiating from savings versus lost services. So these are not technically things that we're saving that we can, that we want to save. They are services that are being lost because of the inability or to hire, or we can't fill the positions, or they're just things being lost here. So I just think that's important for the public to know that it's not that we are attempting to save money or cut the budget. It's just the unfortunate nature of the situation we're in. I just wanted to highlight that.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
I was trying to find a better word than surplus and savings, but
Yeah,
they're all
no,
positive.
I think you did a great job. I just wanted to really highlight that point.
Michelle?
I just want to say that when we made the decision 2 years ago to prepay the tuition, both Vinny and I knew it was bad. It was a bad thing to do. But we needed to have some security around having funds to operate the schools in a difficult time. The reason it's a bad idea, although completely legal, is that you get into these roller coaster things with the budget. And so I really want to commend Vinny for realizing you can't just stop the roller coaster. We have to come down slow so that it's best for the school, for the students, and for the towns. And so, I hope the committee will support this idea that Vinny, this plan that he has now and in the future, and also that, everybody in the community will understand that this is for the betterment of the whole community's budget to handle it this way. And that we're lucky that we didn't need that money. It turned out the roller coaster didn't go upside down. It was just a nice bump, so.
Who knew that was going to happen in March of 2020?
We did not know. We did not know, and it was scary.
Okay, so the third recommendation is to utilize the remaining funds on items that we needed, on items that we weren't able to build in to our budget next year. As you recall, we had nearly $1.4 million in new item requests from the principals that we did not incorporate into our budget. So the idea here is to use some of that money that's left over this year to knock off some of the projects that they needed to get done. Without a doubt, the biggest project lined up is around the technology infrastructure and upgrading our Wi-Fi system. These are the devices you see up in the ceiling. The Ed Fund was gracious enough to purchase these nearly a decade ago. But as many of you probably have done in your house, you don't have the same Wi-Fi in your house as you did 10 years ago. We do across the district. When we implemented this 10 years ago, there was probably 1/3 the amount of devices we have on the network this year. Almost every kid comes in now with an iPad or a Chromebook or some type of laptop. So it's handling a lot more traffic than it's designed to. With meeting with Eric and Alan during our budget cycle, we saw this coming, and we were making plans to slowly chip away at this over the next 5 years in our general budget. So dedicate roughly $30,000 a year the next 5 years to slowly chop away at replacing the Wi-Fi system. Right now, we're asking to just get it done. Let's do it across the district and replace nearly 120 different access points and switches across the 5 schools. In total, we're estimating that'll cost roughly $219,000. In addition to that, we've had a lot of requests for new furniture, especially from the art department and the food service department. So if you go into our art rooms, you can see this at the high school and middle school. There are the big art room desks that have the multiple drawers in them that they paint on. It's probably the same furniture there that a lot of our parents went through. I'm sure their names are probably still carved under the bottom of it.
David Plato.
David's, his name is there, yeah.
So a lot of them are breaking, and during our budget cycle, we got requests to replace them. They're nearly $2,000 a piece, and I believe both at the high school and middle school, there's a need for, I believe, 7 or 6 at each location. On top of that, and I really don't like to say this second part, but it is what it is, at the high school, we have serving tables for the food service department that are wood. That is very porous and is not good to prepare food on it. There's been a request for them to replace that with stainless steel tables. Those, again, are not cheap, so this would go towards replacing those art tables and replacing the food service tables at the high school. In addition, if you've ever been in our gym when they did the Star Spangled Banner or the Pledge of Allegiance, a lot of the times Craig Genualdo was playing it through his cell phone because the gymnasium sound system doesn't work. So right now, it's kind of a bad look when we have visiting teams come into our district. So we're asking to get this done and replace it. Right now, it's just an estimated cost, and I'm being honest about it. We need somebody to come in and figure out what's wrong with it. Right now, we're just estimating that it's gonna cost about $50,000. I'm only being upfront because if it's a bigger project, we're probably gonna come back and ask for a different amount. If it comes in smaller than that, then the money just stays there and gets returned at the end of the year. The next item is around our high school roof. This past year, we put in for an MSBA accelerated repair project for the high school roof, but it just missed the age mark. So I believe we were 2 or 3 years too young, 2 years, too young to get replaced, but there are still leaks everywhere. So right now, it's kind of a patchwork, and we're using just a little bit of money that we have left to fix the leaks. We're asking to invest about $40,000 to plug up the rest of the leaks and get us past that 1 or 2 year mark before we become MSBA eligible and really look into replacing the whole entire roof. The next item is around our athletic equipment. We got a request from Craig Genualdo to replace multiple nets for the soccer team and the field hockey team, as well as replace an aging pole vault pit. He's estimating that all of these items will cost around $40,000. Each one of those nets is somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 a piece, so it adds up quickly. And then the last item we're requesting around this time is in regards to another request in the 23 budget, and it's in regards to the high school, middle school PA system. You saw Craig Hovey and Brian Menegoni both talk about that when they came and presented to you. There's something interfering with both systems. It's kind of becoming a little bit of a security issue. Some of the classrooms aren't getting announcements, so if there's any type of lockdown or something, it really could be a problem. So we really need to address this as soon as we can. So if you agree with all these items, there is transfers that we will need. I understand that I hit you with a lot of information. I'm totally fine with not getting approval tonight. I would just ask that our next meeting, we would seek approval or denial, or it would be better if we got it tonight. And mainly the reason for that is Because with the supply chain issue, if we're going to do these projects, we've really got to get them going. In the next quarter, we'll be coming around, obviously, in the end of March. If you were to do the math out here, the $770,000 I'm requesting to leave to E&D, the $1.1 million in prepaid tuitions, and the roughly $450,000 in projects, that still leaves almost $400,000 between the 2.8 that I said we have left. So the reason I'm not asking for it, there's two reasons. One, the first thing I said, there's still 50% of the year left. I stand on the conservative side. Anything can happen between now and then. I don't want to spend every penny we have right now in case something comes up that we need to react to before the end of the year. And the second reason is, we are cut pretty thin right now, and what we don't want to do is add on a lot of projects that we're never going to do and we can't handle. These projects that I mentioned are important, and we at least need to accomplish these. I might be coming to you at the end of Q3 and presenting to you different projects that we might be able to get done between April and June, but for right now, that's kind of where we are settling. So if you agree, there are transfers and a motion, but I will take any questions you might have.
Okay, do we have questions? Okay, do we want to have a motion?
I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee approves the fiscal year '22 operating expense budget transfers as recommended here by the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Administration and as presented on the previous slide entitled, quote, transfers needed, end quote.
Second.
Second by Anna Siedzik. Their discussion? Michelle Bailey?
Can we go back and see the slide? Thank you.
Of course, yes, sorry. This one or the one before it?
Well, this is the one that we're voting on.
Yes,
So yeah,
yep.
just this one. So basically, at this point, you're taking the excess in insurance premiums or savings in the insurance and transferring them to cover those projects that you just outlined.
Yes, and the reason I'm taking it from insurance and not tuitions is because at the end of the year, if you approve the prepayment of tuitions, you'd have to reverse it back in. So
Yep.
I purposely stayed away in case you approve that in the June.
Plus, these also, this is for sure. We for sure know that we'll save this because the premium is down and people didn't take the insurance during the first part of the year, so it makes sense.
In theory, somebody could walk in the door tomorrow and say their spouse lost health insurance, but I'm confident that the numbers here will stay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to take a second to, thank you, Vinnie. I think it's hard for some people to understand how having leftover money at the end of a, business year, it can be a bad thing for a school district. I think you did a great job of explaining, the pitfalls of doing that and actually finding really good solutions, for our district and actually utilizing that money that's already been, approved and really just finding ways to just do things around the district that need to be done, and that'll just improve our day-to-day operations. So thank you for that.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, looks like we're ready for a vote. All right, and it's a roll call. I'm finally getting it. All right, I'm going to start with you, Julia.
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Dana's yes. Anna?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes, Michelle Bailey.
Okay, and that is unanimous, and the motion passes. Thank you
you,
so
guys.
much, Vinnie. I appreciate all your work on that. Then I would echo what David said, that was quite very clear and helpful.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we are going to talk about, next up is the face covering policy review and discussion. You guys recall that at our last meeting, we talked about that there would be several different items presented tonight, including a proposed plan, and I'm not sure what's going on.
A lot of people need power.
What's going on? Everyone is standing up.
What is going on?
Anyway, so including a proposed plan and various, several different surveys of various groups in our community. We heard a little bit already. Chris presented a little bit about the students, but there's a lot of other data. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Eric. And then my goal is to have a discussion and provide Eric with some feedback. All right, go ahead, Eric.
Thank you. I'll start right here where we usually start. This is the live data because when we originally posted, the Wenham data hadn't been posted, but I received it from Mary Beth Ting, so.
Make it a little, can you make it a little bigger?
Yep.
Thank you.
Better?
Yep.
Okay. So town of Hamilton's cases are 16, Wenham 15, the aggregate, and that's over 14 days, 128, down from 196 cases previous. Those numbers just continue to slowly tick down. Positive cases are also ticking down, as you can see in the middle. Here, we've had some pretty high bumps up, because now coming down to a case here and a case there, and 2 or 3 in the elementary schools. Still, the Bucher is still leading the way on that one. Pool testing. 4 positive pools last week out of 185. Notice the number's down. The number's down for 2 reasons. A few weeks back, we had shifted and reduced the number of actual people in the pool to between 3 and 5, depending on the building. So there's that issue, and then there are also more people opting not to be pool tested who have had COVID. So that's a secondary issue. But we had 4 positive pools across the district last week, and our total, since we started, is up to 83. And these were updated today, so I thought they were worth sharing. I did break out the preschool for the Winthrop as requested last meeting. You can see the numbers here. So this Winthrop number has no preschool students in there. They're not old enough to be vaccinated, so we didn't include them in the vax number. So these numbers are up again. The high school is up to 88.6, Miles River student vax 81.3, Bucher 86.2, Cutler 75, Winthrop 75.7. Staff vaccinations are all generally the same as they have been, so the averages are up across the board. Slightly, a tiny bit at the high school, because I think it was only a shift of 1 person, but some of the others are moving up fairly rapidly to cross the 80% mark in the Miles River and the Bucher. Winthrop too, without the calculation of the preschool kids. So moving on, I want to.
And approximately how many preschool kids do we have?
38, I think there are.
38, okay.
Not all full-time.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Right, that's actually important, right? They're not in the building as much as a.
Can I ask a question on the preschool specifically?
Absolutely.
And this is only because I'm not familiar with Winthrop in the layout of it. In terms of physical isolation and crossover, how much contact do the preschoolers at Winthrop have with the rest of the students at Winthrop? Both in terms of like physical shared spaces, I'm just curious how much they
Depending on the time of
commingle.
the day, the transition, it could be going to the bathroom, going outside, going to recess, getting snacks. The kids are all in the same hallway, so if you go into the Winthrop through the CAF, take the left, there are 2 preschool classes on the left side, right when you enter that hallway, and 1 across the hall. And then you run into 2nd grade classroom, 3rd grade classroom, 3rd grade classroom. So there are, I believe 5 other classrooms down there in the same corridor. So they do cross paths quite often through a school day.
Okay. Thank you.
They also leave earlier. So they come in slightly later, and they leave a little bit earlier, and there are different kids there each day. So some kids come for 2 days a week,
Right.
some kids come for 3 days a week, some kids come for 5 days a week. So there's not always all of them there. Like I was in there, the building the other day, and I was in a class with 9. Just, that's how many come on that particular day, so.
Okay. Thank you.
The next piece of information is the town of Wenham. I got to listen to their meeting while driving in this morning. They had their meeting last night at the select board. I know, it's exciting, but they voted to hold on their vote, so there's still a mask requirement in Wenham. They did signal that they intended to align with the school system. They didn't quite have the information that they needed on the 28th and drop it then, but they wanted to go back to the town municipal employees and talk with them. The question got asked, did we ask the municipal employees? Nobody asked them, so they said, well, wait, we will go back and ask them and then move forward from there. So Wenham still has a public space.
When is their next meeting? Do we know?
It's the week, I think it's the week after vacation.
And they meet on Monday.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Like Tuesday,
I want to say the 8th, but don't quote me.
So the week after our next meeting?
Are we talking about the Board of Health or the Board of Selectmen?
What did you say, Michelle?
Are we talking about the Board of Health or the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen.
Well,
Board of-
the
Selectmen.
Select Board.
Board of Health recommended 2 to 1. I got to listen to that meeting the day before. They recommended 2 to 1 that the Select Board drop the mask mandate. So Select Board has left it open.
And the next meeting of the Wenham Select Board scheduled is?
I believe it's
I'm gonna look it
8.
up.
I'm not positive.
Okay.
The first and third Tuesday of each month,
So
according to their website.
That looks
be
like
first,
it would
right?
be
First.
March 1st
First.
would
be
be.
the first, yeah.
Although I can't seem to get that. But yeah. Okay.
Next item, Hamilton has dropped their mask mandate for public places. That was done about a little over a week ago or so. Exhibit 5, this is a parent mask survey data. Make that a little bit bigger, broken down by school. Numbers here. Bigger number, 49.4 in the blue is the mask optional. These are people that selected yes, mask optionals. In the red, no masks at all. So red and blue are really looking at some type of change, either from being all masks, so either no mask at all or optional masks. When you get into the gold or yellow, keeping everybody masked. Green, requiring only the unvaccinated to be masked. And then the white represents, I don't know why I put an other in there, but people were able to chime in on other things, and they were things like, I'm okay with mask optional, so they should have just picked it mask optional. So that represents there. And I left the comments here so people could go through them at their leisure, so that we had a good picture of what people wanted to let us know. And it's good information. There's information that ranges from, it's a terrible idea to unmask it right after vacation, to let's do it right now and forget, just do it. So we have that end of the spectrum, that end of the spectrum, and everything in between. There are some people that are saying wait 2 weeks. There are some people that say do it in stages, and then there's groups that like the 28th, I want to come to school with no mask. So we've kind of seen it, the entire spectrum with this parent information. The next.
Before you move on, can I ask a question
Yep.
about this? I just want to make sure I'm understanding the percentages correctly. So 865 responses represents about half the district? Is that right? So
Some have kids in multiple schools.
Right.
I did not sift out multiple schools. I only went in and said, if, Eric Tracy answered twice the same way, like kid at Bucher twice, I took those out, which there were 3 occurrences of that.
So there were 865 unique responses.
To kids, I should say. So if you had a child in the Bucher, and you had a child in the Cutler, people were answering for both. So they would say,
At the same time?
yes, at the same time.
That's what I meant. So
Yeah,
just
yeah,
overall.
sorry.
Okay, so in 865, like I said, I think our enrollment right now is like 1,700-ish, right? Close to?
1688.
1688, so that's about half the district total. So it's the 49.4% is 49% of the people who answered. But if you were to actually make the denominator for the whole district, it would be roughly half of that for across the board. All of the percentages would be sort of half of what they are, so.
So the 49% represents about a quarter of the,
A quarter of the total.
yeah.
If you assume that the data set is representative of the other 50%.
Right.
Well, so that was my next question, is that I'm hoping Jen can answer this question a little bit. I always thought that when you do surveys like this, a non-response isn't necessarily indicative of patterns that hold the same. Like, it could be that people are indifferent and they really don't care, so they didn't answer, or it could be that it trends negatively. Is there any, I'm not a statistician, so I'm sort of looking at you because I think you do more of that, but is there any way to understand, because we're missing 50% of the district, I'm just trying to get a sense of, like, if we were to have asked them, would it have trended the same way? Would it have trended more favorably, or would it have potentially trended more negatively?
Statistically, when we did it earlier in the year, we got about 560-ish responses, 565, I think, if I remember correctly. If you're looking for good, solid statistics, you're going to just randomize it and send it out to just a random number of people. So you're going to say, we're going to send this out to 400 random people across the district and get their response. That would be more statistically valid than just letting it out to everybody and saying, chime in on it. Because what happens was, I could tell when this thing hit Facebook, because it was like boom, 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 boom. Everybody got into it. So it's not perfect. Definitely.
When I was looking at this data earlier, the way I was breaking it out was, if you're indifferent to answering, you're probably okay. I was, going under the assumption that you're going to be okay with the masks lifting. And I was then looking at, those gold, and really kind of cutting that in half as a total, right? Just in really thinking that about 10% of the district, 9% here, 8% here, and then I think with the teachers is more like 10%. And those are the numbers that, really sort of concern me. How are we going to make sure that we're appeasing them? I think that as you're looking at that total, you're probably, the better assumption would be that, they're going to do what they're going to do, and just sort of do it that way. It would be a stretch to say that someone wasn't going to vote in the poll because they felt they were going to be overwhelmed. Like, I don't want, I want to keep the mask on, and I'm going to get bullied, forced out. So I just think looking at it that way, you're just assuming that the complacency is towards the removal.
But
That's a pretty safe assumption.
there are always going to be a certain percentage who didn't read their email, don't come to school committees, and just don't answer it.
But at that point, you're just like, if they're not sort of passionate enough that they're looking at this,
They're indifferent.
I can't get caught.
Right, this is, to be clear, this is not meant to be a scientific study in which you would want to randomize. This is more like an election where people choose to participate.
Right.
And it was well publicized, as David and Eric both pointed out, it was well publicized, so.
Yeah. No, I just want to make sure I was interpreting the overall numbers right. And the 9.9 says requiring only the unvaccinated to be masked, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, we sent out a survey to students earlier in the year as well, and we ended up getting like the exact same percentage as we got now.
Okay.
And we got more students back then respond to it as we did now, and the exact same percentage I think showed up.
And remind me about what percent you got from the high school, do you remember?
Here, we got 87, and now we have like 86.
Okay, so you actually got a higher percentage than you did from the parents and families.
Maybe more responsive.
Yep.
Anything to avoid homework.
What was that?
Anything to avoid.
And they're the actual people that are really answering the question for themselves, right? So, yeah, thank you. Okay.
All right, next piece. Nick Restaino and I I've talked many times in the past few weeks, but last week we touched base, came to some conclusion about the way to word the teacher
Can you make it a
data.
little bigger
Yep.
for the audience, yeah.
And he had sent me this after, I think he put it out last Friday, closed it on Wednesday morning, and gave us this data from the teaching staff with some numbers underneath. I just want people to be clear, I cut this out of an email. There were other things that really were superfluous to the actual number, so this has been cut and pasted out of an email Nick sent. So in the realm of the teachers here, you're looking at universal masking regardless of vaccination status, 31% of their 119 responses. In the red, masking only for unvaccinated and those on 5 through 10, that should say 6 through 10. It's really 6 through 10. He realized it after of a COVID infection. And then the gold, 50% mask optional, except on the days, that should also be 6 through 10 of a COVID infection, which is still the current requirement. So if you have COVID and you're out for 5 days, you have to be masked 6 through 10 days, even if there's no mask requirement where you go to school.
How many teachers are in the association, approximately? 180, or?
It's
Oh, you said that.
slightly under 200 total for the teacher, for his groups.
So we have around
There's-
80 teachers that didn't respond to this
Right.
survey.
Is it also true that custodians weren't also allowed to respond to the survey?
No, this wouldn't go to the.
This would have been this is the teachers' union, so
Yeah,
it went
teachers'
out
union.
from the union. So, no, the custodians wouldn't have been in this.
190 members,
Okay.
Yep.
according to Nick.
Other questions on this?
And just so I'm understanding correctly, regardless of what we do, well, I think this is true, regardless of what we do, if you have had a positive case and you come back to school on day 6, you're going to stay masked through day 10. I believe that's also outdoors, correct? It's masked at all times? There's no notion of a mask break?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, unless you're outside by yourself, like on your own, but.
I would hope that the kids are not outside by themselves,
Yeah,
but...
yeah. And I just heard this morning there are more conversations at the state level that could change things again between now and the 28th, which is, with some of the other guidance, which always bothers me because they will wait till the Sunday vacation's over and send an email out.
Yep.
So that's what they did to us on New Year's Day. So that's the only thing I'm concerned about, that there is still this DPH, DESE discussion around some things that are going on. So this is my recommendation, and I want to make it clear, it is only a recommendation. I don't get a vote, so I wanted to at least get the conversation started. And in looking at all of the data and talking to individual custodians, Nick Cristino and teachers group, parents, lots of parents that both have called me, grabbed me out at a school, emailed me. I tried to find this balance in between what everybody wants. We have the stop on the 28th, and I don't want to wear a mask again, and we have the don't drop the mask during vacation time, because we do know that every single time it's been a huge increase right after vacation. And then there is also the opportunity to tier this down. So there's 1,000 ways you could do this, depending on how you look at it. One of the things I did was talk to building principals, leadership team people about tiering down, because I had initially said, what if we went 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks? Middle school, high school reminded me that DECA counted them as one place, so they would like to operate together. That's just feedback from both the middle and high school. And then from there, people were fine with timelines, because the principals need time to talk to kids about those sudden differences that now appear from kids that will be wearing masks and kids will not be wearing masks, an adult will be wearing a mask, an adult might not be wearing a mask. Those, if you walk in on, 28th and say, masks are gone, without having those opportunities for conversations with kids, I think you're creating some other issues, and I'm not saying like this is something that stays on forever. I'm just saying the principals would like time to be able to communicate with kids and talk to kids. And part of that is what I put in here with a rollout the week after vacation, giving time that first week for principals to meet with kids, remind them of some of the responses that we have, talking to them about harassing other kids, bullying other kids, whether online or in school, giving teachers and principals time to talk to our kids, our youngest learners especially, about why this student in their class might be wearing a mask, or why these 4 students might be wearing a mask, or why not. So, we know parents will help with that as well. Those are pretty, I think those are pretty interesting conversations to have with younger kids especially. Nursing staff has to remain masked. That's a requirement. I thought it was just their request, so when I went and talked to them, that is still a state requirement, that because it's considered a medical location, that they have to be masked, and anybody going into the nurse's office, even if you're going in to get a Tylenol, you have to have a mask on. So we'd have to come up with a solution for that.
All those kids that wander to the nurse are going to be cutting down those visits.
I assume, Eric, though, I know we have available masks in the school, so they
Yes.
can be provided outside the nurse's office without.
We were fortunate to get a number of free masks from the state that were initially thought to be dysfunctional or not as operational as we thought they would be. And that same night, I was able to work with Tom. We actually nailed down a shipment of N95 masks that we had brought in over a number of days. We actually got the company to overnight some of us to us immediately. So we have masks. We have plenty of masks. We have plenty of masks between the free stuff we're getting we got from FEMA, and all of the masks that we actually purchased with our ESSER money that we had planned to purchase. State guidance also, as I talked about, that 5-day isolation requirement, mask after the 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 days. MIA regulations for masking, this is tricky right now because I'll use Amesbury as an example. They got a waiver, dropped the masks at their high school, so our kids wear masks when they compete at home, but if they go there, there's no requirement for a mask. So that's now, I would say between now and the 28th, you'll see MIA drop the masks at some point in time. I just feel like they'll follow the state so that.
I thought they already had done that.
Sorry, say again?
I thought they already had said that the 28th,
No, it says that you have to follow the rules of the jurisdiction
Community, yeah.
of where you're going. But
Talking to Craig and other ADs, they
Right, so
feel.
the MIAA doesn't have a policy anymore. So
Right.
they've dropped their policy.
So it's
Left
back
it
to
up
us again.
the individual districts.
Schools, right.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And then, where was I? MIA regulations. Then the superintendent authorized to return to face coverings if there's an increase of 10%. This is not a number that I medically found anywhere. It was actually taken from the previous recommendation where I had, if you remember the one we did in December, it was between 5 and 10%. We never actually nailed down a number. It went towards 10%. I'm looking at the numbers of kids that have had COVID in individual schools. The number of kids, the number of kids we're not testing now. The piece that Dr. Carr brought up earlier, which was what's important, was if a different variant came through, there is a possibility of it hitting 10% in a building of 300 kids in no time. We've seen that already. We did that right after vacation. But that's not in stone. Again, this is just a proposal. And then it just allows us to manage the vacation time, which we know we'll see some spikes, and that could be at various schools. We're seeing this wave that went through the entire school system and kind of is ending with the Bucher right now, where the Bucher has been case, and they're starting to tip out a little bit now. So, open for discussion, suggestions.
Michelle Horgan.
What's the status on at-home tests?
I probably have as many as you have at home, right? They are everywhere right now. We have at-home tests that are coming out once every 2 weeks from the state. If you want them, you don't have to sign up. And I apologize, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but we're giving out a pretty good number of free at-home tests to students and staff members in the district. So every 2 weeks, on an opposite week, teachers would get their 2 tests that would last 2 weeks. The next week, the kids would get them, then the teachers, so it just keeps rotating like that. I don't know how long that's going to last, but it's in effect right now. Just like pool testing, I don't know how long pool testing will last, but we'll continue to do it as long as we can, as the state's funding it, so there's no reason not to. I think all those kind of surveillance pieces are helpful. The home testing, people have used it. Like you can go back and look at the cases that we have on the reported chart. They don't align with what we're finding in the pools because people are using the home tests to find out, hey, my kid has COVID, and not sending them to school. So
in theory, if you come home on Saturday from Florida, as a parent, you will be testing your child before they show up to school on Monday.
In theory.
In theory.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and let's just say there was a carrot of a mask coming off on the 1st of March as opposed to March 7th. You think the responsibility would be with the parents to say, okay, I need to do what I can do, everything I can do to make sure that this community stays safe.
Yeah, that's the hard part to manage.
Right.
We have no idea. We really, I mean, in all honesty, we're not giving out 100% of the population the test.
Right.
So that's a factor to consider. There's probably a 30% of our total population that's not signed up for the free tests.
Okay. Thank you.
Jen.
2 things. I would really like to drop that 10% number to 5% because we never would have added masks even back in January when we had 40 plus cases in some schools. We wouldn't have hit that 10% mark. Also, I knew this was going to be on the agenda. I spent the entire weekend, with some exceptions, reading 20 to 30 primary source literature articles. I hit Journal of the American Medical Association, New England Journal of Medicine, Science, Nature, Infectious Diseases. I read pro-masks and anti-masks. And then I contacted everybody, well, not everybody, but a good chunk of the people that I know who are scientists. I talked to immunologists, epidemiologists, biology instructors, doctors, emergency room nurses. Not a single one, and I probably talked to 60 scientists, not a single one said we were ready for this. They all said we were close, but that we weren't there yet. The research supports that masks work. And I'm talking studies with 1,500, 2,000, 6,500 people in it that have statistically significant results. And we aren't there yet. We're just not. One kid, we make this decision and we make this call to take masks off, and one kid dies. And yes, the odds of that are really, really small. I agree, 100%. I'm not going to be able to live with myself because I made the call to vote to take the masks off, to knowingly know what the science is and take that risk. And that's something we need to ask ourselves. The science isn't there yet. We aren't there yet. We're getting there, and we will be there. But that's the decision we're making. We're making a decision to go against what the science is saying, and I'll provide anybody who wants it the list of all the articles I've read. I don't think I've read that many articles since I published my last research paper. And you can read them, and I'll talk to anybody who wants to talk about them. But nobody that I have found in the scientific community at 5 universities around Boston and Cambridge, including Harvard, Tufts, and Brown, said that this was okay. We're just not there yet. I'm sorry.
Okay. Michelle?
So I'd like to say that I agree with Jen about that 10% thing, that we just shouldn't have it there. We should just leave it that, for whatever discretion, whatever reason you have, you don't need to have a percent there. You need to have good judgment, but you don't need to have a guideline there. I told Eric last night that that's the wrong date, but I just think, you maybe need just a little bit more time. I personally don't think the decision before the school committee is, do we remove masks? The question is when and how. So when we vote on the 3rd, we'll have some better guidelines about when and how. So, I'll look forward to that. But, one of the things that is important to me is that the superintendent is authorized to make decisions, and that he doesn't need our approval to do that because of the rigmarole you have to go through for that. So, but otherwise, I will be ready to vote next meeting on this.
So I just want to add to what Michelle said. If you guys remember, we had, to the point about what you just said about authorizing the superintendent to use his judgment in an emergency or in a situation as things, and we, that's very similar to what we did when we entered back into school in person, that we did put I believe we had a provision in there that the superintendent could, if there were a situation, move us to a remote situation, knowing that it's always only 2 weeks at the very maximum, that the school committee would be meeting again anyway to make, to vote or to give direction. And the school committee could be called to meet, with 48 hours notice if we needed to do that. So I agree with Michelle that it really doesn't need to have a number on it. It really can just be that superintendent can be authorized, as the situation changes to make a change to that policy. It's my 2 cents on that. Anna?
Actually, I think, David, you had your hand up a while ago.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that, David.
Yeah, so I'm a little upset about this presentation, because with this memo going out at about 1 o'clock this afternoon, I started seeing the word getting out that we're going maskless March 7th. So before we even had a chance to have a discussion, that word's getting out. So now no matter what we say, I can actually hear people typing right now, Polito wants us to stay in masks, and they're writing to here, hit send. Right? You sort of bound our hands on what we can do without repercussion back on us. Now, granted, it's our job as a committee to sort of be that buffer for you, so you can actually run the district and we can take that public comment. But earlier this week, I sent a timeline to you and Dana proposing a staggered approach to reopening, beginning at the 7th, at the high school, and then the 21st around with the middle school, and then giving the elementary schools, the 1st of April, I believe. because it was under my assumption at the time, just sort of gauging the feedback I was getting, that I was thinking that the elementary schools were going to need the most time, and having those 2-week intervals between, the high schoolers ready to go. We see a sort of, a spike that you can pull back. It's way easier to pull back only one school, right? Plus it gives us an extra month, but now we can't really do that. But the other thing that's interesting to me was that I wasn't too happy with the results of those polls either, because it didn't break out the information as clearly as I would have liked to have seen. But if I was reading that correctly, there's actually a large contingent at the middle school of teachers that are pretty trepidatious about this, right? And by sort of putting this out there at the 7th, right? Like we're going masses to 7th, right? It's really going to be difficult not to, but we're not giving them their voice. We haven't even had a chance to sort of put that out there to at least to make sure that they're heard. We've all gotten the emails. There's a lot more people that are very passionate about being maskless or mask optional right now, and that's okay. I love that they're there, right? I'm so ready to be there myself, but I wanted to make sure that at least we're pointing out that we hear, that we see, and that we're willing to work with that 10%, right? Even in your survey, where someone's like, oh, don't let the 15% control us. We're not letting them control you. You just want to make sure that they're being heard, right? And it's not like it's not a bad thing, but you as a big leader in this district, have that responsibility to make sure that those kids that aren't comfortable, that you're leading the way to make sure that their feelings are being met, that if they're walking around with masks on still, that no one's bothering them, right? That's the weight you're holding on your shoulders, and that's the same way we get elected to do as well, right? To make sure that those marginalized groups are just being taken care of. Excuse me. Like I said, I'm ready for this to happen. We're very, very close. Are we there yet? I don't know. But, if everybody's starting to get there, right, where we do have 85% of people that are ready to get there, I'm ready to get there with you and make sure that opportunity's there. But I'm not ever going to be okay with not listening to that other 15%, right? And I think this memo is a little premature because it sort of shuts that out, right? And I understand what you're doing here. I like the fact that it's sort of out there and you try to put that there. But we know that when DECA said, February 20, or when Baker said February 28th, all everyone heard was, we're going maskless February 28th. We knew there were 10-page of rules behind that, right? No one's reading anything other than March 7th on that memo, So I have to say I was a little disappointed on that. I do think we'll be ready. I think we have the staff. I think we have an incredible staff here. That is going to take care of those kids, right? They know who they are in their classrooms, right? I think the teachers that need the support are going to get the support from their building leaders and from their colleagues. I want to make sure they know they do have our support, even though we might be moving a little faster than they are. So, that's really what I wanted to say. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I think that students are definitely listening to their state officials, and when their governor is telling them that it's safe to do so, and they're
Chris, can you speak in the microphone? I can hear you.
I think that students are definitely listening to their state officials as well, which is definitely a big thing with them. And when they're telling them that it's safe to do so with CDC guidelines as well, they're definitely just listening to them. So when they're telling them that and other people are telling them differently, I think they're going to listen to what their officials who they vote for want for.
CDC does right.
Just to clarify, we don't meet CDC guidelines for unmasking.
Right.
Don't.
So
the governor says we can, but if we followed what the CDC said, we would not be taking off masks. We do not meet those guidelines.
Julia?
Yes, so I feel like I'm gonna have,
Oh, Julia, you know what? You're a little quiet. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
am I muted?
Yeah, just a second.
Just
I
wait a
think
second.
the mic,
I think the mic's.
Hold on, he's going to adjust the mic for you.
I mean, it's on, but,
Oh, that's better. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
yes.
Try it.
Where is the microphone on her computer?
it's so funny, but we can,
Before you could hear.
before we could hear you very well, now you're very quiet. No, you're not on mute. We can hear you. You're just very quiet.
That's the,
Go ahead. We'll all listen carefully. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm not on mute. I don't know what's going on.
That's pretty good. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So I actually have a really different opinion. I think that this memo is really perfectly timed, and I think that it's incredibly thoughtful and intentional, taking into account all of the different perspectives that we've had to and wanted to listen to over the past few weeks. And I also love that we didn't rush to make a decision the way maybe some other districts felt was right for them. We move at our own pace, and we are doing what we feel is right for us at this time. So I just want to say I really respect that. I respect that we are taking the time to be intentional and taking the time to be thoughtful. And I know that people are seeing that. But I agree with this, and I agree with what Michelle Bailey said. It's not if we're taking the masks off, it's when and how can we do it responsibly. And there's never going to be a perfect time. There's never a perfect time for any of the decisions that we make. We need to do what we can with the evidence presented and with what we think is best. And personally, just for me, I agree with Eric's proposal and his plan, and I think it's very responsible, and I think it's taking into account all of the differing opinions and things that we've heard. So that's just my opinion, and I just wanted to say that I actually really found that I thought that this diffused a lot of the vitriol and hostility that we have been seeing over the past few weeks. I think that having a plan, having an end game, or at least proposing a solution definitely quieted some of the voices that were the most angry at us because we didn't have a plan, or we were rushing, or we were not rushing. So I like the fact that we're taking a really intentional approach, and we're not rushing, and we're having these conversations, and we're not surprising any of these different stakeholders. So for me, I actually really, I like the way this was rolled out, and I like the way it was presented.
Thank you. Michelle? Bailey.
It's me. Yeah, I would just have to say that this is a proposal, right? It ain't final till the gavel comes down, so we haven't voted on this yet. I would be interested at our next meeting hearing what the principals think about a tiered approach, particularly for elementary school going a little later, because many of those kids have never known school without masks. So it will take a little bit of adjusting for them. It'll be something that's different to be in school. So I don't know if teachers feel like they need a little bit more time to have their classroom community meetings and discussions about that. So I would be interested in knowing that information. I know that through the process of negotiations that we've always had in mind that we had a date in mind, and that date isn't too far off from here. But ultimately, for me personally, it's this February break that's got me bothered. Right?
Say that again?
It's the February break that has me bothered. Yep. And that's why I kind of liked the idea of, more towards the end of March that we had originally been thinking about. So, people want to take that chance. I'm okay with it, but I would like to hear what the principals think about, 1 week up at whatever it is, 775, and then the next week down here in the middle of town, so.
I can actually answer that now.
Okay.
Because I actually spun off of Dave's plan that he said, and we talked about what does tiering look like. It's not 100% agreement at the elementary level, but they would be fine with tiering out. Like if you said, okay, we're going to do middle high school on the 7th, and then elementary's on the 14th. They were not opposed to anything. All of the principals were concerned about coming back from vacation and just going wham, and that was really the piece where they all agreed. Didn't have 100% agreement with all elementaries about any exact date or time. So.
Okay.
But the tiering though bothers me in regards to families.
What?
Because what if you have a student that's in elementary and a student that's in the middle school? So you're putting just a lot more strife and just problems on a family level. And there's already been enough put on our families, as we all know, and our students over the last 2 years. It's not popular among this group, but we're peers, but I had talked to Dana, I would love for the mask mandate to, vote tonight and for it to be March 1st for the sake of I know that's very throwing caution to the wind, but I am concerned about the kids' mental health from what we've heard, from parents and people that we know in town. I'm glad that there's the 7th is the date. I wouldn't want to see it past the 7th just because of our students. So, and I just feel like, Stacy Busick did say that since September, we've had 11 hospitalizations of students in our district for mental health issues. I don't know what it was pre-COVID. I don't know what a normal number would look like, but that's alarming. And not that a mask is going to solve all the issues that our students and our families have endured during COVID, but it is a step for them trying to regain, to have a little bit of a normal childhood, and that's what we need to do for them, so.
I'm going to have Anna, and then I might say something, and then maybe we'll have Jen. Go
That's
ahead.
okay. Superintendent, did you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
You sure? Okay.
I was actually asking for clarification, but I wrote it down, so we're all set.
Okay. So, I think I actually am I'm really thinking about what a compromise looks like here, because I think we have such polarity, even within the committee, which I think is representative of the community as well. So in my mind, we've really been dealt an impossible losing hand. Like there's really no solution that's really going to resound in cheers. So to me, it says, okay, what is the compromise? And I think I'm not as bothered by the memo because I think it's gotten us talking. I do agree a little bit with David. It's sort of giving some sense of false hope, but I think we're finally having the conversation that the community really wants us to have. So I think that's okay. And I actually agree with Michelle Horgan that whatever we do, I think has to be uniform. I think one of the most persistent feelings I'm getting from every parent I talk to is just exasperation of this, that, then change, do that. I think whatever we need to do needs to be enough of a compromise that people, barring massive new variant, huge spike, Thanos situation, like barring insanity, which at this point I'm not going to hold my breath that won't happen. But I feel like whatever we do needs to be something that we feel like, okay, this decision will last for a bit, and it's uniform for all families, and we're not parsing it out and this, that. Like, I just feel like the community needs some sense of stability as much as we can possibly offer. So in my mind, I'm thinking, like, what is the compromise? And I very much am troubled by the February break. And I'm just going back and looking at the bump data from December, and you really do see a noticeable bump for the first 2 weeks or so after the vacation. I mean, that data is obvious. Like, we can't deny that. So I definitely feel like the 7th to me still feels a little bit too soon, but I also do think that prolonging it much further is just going to result in chaos in the district in a way that's not going to be tenable for anybody. So I think there has to be some kind of compromise between no, not ever, we need to wait. And it's interesting, some of the feedback actually said, like, let's finish this whole year in masks and start again in September. Like, there are legitimately people in the district who feel that way. And then there's people in the district who feel like we never should have had masks in the first place. So between those two true extremes as everybody else, and I feel like the prudent thing, and I'm really glad to have a scientist on the committee, like, thank you for reading the journals that we didn't read, that's fantastic. To me, a compromise is to say, I think the 7 might be a little too soon for a lot of different reasons. I think it's the transition from break. I think the teachers getting ready, the kids getting ready, the families that maybe want to get better masks, that need some time to find that. I know that my family was having trouble finding child size N95s that they wanted. So it gives people time, but I also think it does respond a bit more to the science, which is we know that the bump happens a couple weeks later. So I do think the 7th is premature, but I also know that, to Michelle Horgan's point, people are not necessarily acting with their rational minds right now. I think that feelings are just as real as data, depending on how you see the world. And so I think what I want to get to is a compromise that shows a little more empathy for whatever anyone's feeling, And I think actually that's, to me, the biggest thing that was lost in the last few weeks is just an appreciation that what every family is going through is true for them, and it's not really right to judge where someone else is. So how can we get to a point where everyone feels heard? And I always think we have to be mindful of the vulnerable minority. So I do agree with David that that's why I was trying to picking at those numbers a bit. I was trying to find out, well, it's not like it's 1%. It is statistically significant, the number of families that are still uncomfortable. It's statistically significant, the number of teachers that are still uncomfortable. And I think if we're really trying to represent the entirety of the district, we have to acknowledge the polls, we have to find a compromise in the middle, and I think we should be driven by science as much as the psyche of the community will allow us to be. And I agree that Jen Carr, if you are a strict data purist, and I actually agree with you on the data side, like, the CDC is not recommending this. The science doesn't support it. I totally agree, and yet I think if we stick to that pure line, this community will implode. And I actually don't think that we can let that happen, even though it might not be driven by data. The emotions are just as real. And at least in our house, we often have this argument where, my brain understands something, but my heart will not let me feel it the same way. And at some point, you make decisions with your mind, and other times you make decisions with your heart. And I think on this one, unfortunately, we have to make one that's a little bit of both. And I think, to me, that little bit of both is to push it out after break. I would suggest maybe another week later still. But I think we need to give people a date to plan for, barring chaos. And I think we need to give them something they can look to, plan their kids for, have those conversations to say, you're going to go to school and it's going to be different. How do you feel about it? I think we need everyone time to get ready, but I do think we have to put a stake in the ground so people can plan. Thank you.
I'm going to interrupt you. Thank you. I'm going to interrupt because it is 10:17 and we actually have a policy. I'm sorry that I should have stopped 15 minutes ago. I think that we can wrap this conversation up fairly quickly, but I do think we still have a few more minutes in my thought. But I guess I need to ask the committee whether you are willing to continue on. I can't really remember whether I do that just in a simple motion.
It's a simple majority.
All right, so I'm going to move
3 more minutes.
that we continue to meet for up to 30 more minutes.
Second.
Second by Anna Seidzick.
Point of clarification, is that 30 minutes 10:30 or is it 30 minutes from now?
Oh, I guess 10:30. We can do this again at 10:30. So, all right, is there any discussion? All right, we're ready to vote? Okay, Michelle Bailey.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. David.
Yes.
Julia.
My flight is at 5:30 in the morning. Yes.
Thank you, Julia.
Fair enough.
Okay, so I'm going to just Because the purpose of I'm going to just say one thing if that's okay. The purpose of tonight's discussion was to set us up for what we anticipated is a vote on the 3rd. And what I'm wondering, and you tell me, but what I'm wondering from what I'm hearing is it sounds like, and I'm just going to throw this out there, I really do want to have a vote on the 3rd so that people are clear on what is going on. It sounds to me like on the committee that there are a variety of different dates that different people would like to have at the top of this document. I don't hear a lot of people expressing concern about other portions of this. We've already talked about section number 5. There was some suggestions regarding eliminating, but other than that, does that seem accurate, that we're talking about a variety of dates? Is that?
I would like to just ask for one more thing maybe that might be useful.
Okay.
We're saying students can take the masks off. Do we want to also add some clarity to the memo to indicate what other, I'm forgetting the word, what other mechanisms we will still be using to, just so the parents are aware?
About mitigation.
Mitigation.
Yeah, what are the other
strategies,
mitigation strategies that are staying in place?
I think that will be, whether it's in, I mean, you're asking that it be in this particular memo. I think whether it's definitely important that those be communicated to parents.
It needs to be clear, concise, and
Can you
constant.
speak in the mic?
I believe that the, messaging needs to be clear, concise, and constant.
Yeah.
Right. So to that, I would actually add transportation as well.
Say what?
Clarity on transportation.
Clarity about the bus transportation.
Right now, I mean, I have it on my computer in 10 minutes, so it could have changed, but, we still need to wear.
Right now, it's a federal requirement still.
Right.
But it's still early.
So just for me, when I'm planning, Eric and I are going to sit and plan the meeting, I don't know, but I'm going to ask the question, does it seem like, so this is, the presentation is, the vote, I don't know how to phrase this because I want to provide clarity to the community, but I also want to have a vote on the 3rd. So this could, by having a date on here, that allows the community to provide us with feedback on what they think about this date. That was my intention by having Eric present, as we talked about last meeting, an actual plan so that people in the community and the committee, of course, but also people in the community had the opportunity so that it wasn't that we didn't just arrive. So what I'm trying to prevent is I don't want that to happen on the 3rd. I don't want us to arrive on the 3rd and come up with something completely new. I want the community to have an expectation that there's going to be a vote on the 3rd and that it is a vote. So that means it could be, up or down, or there could be options. But I want to put that out there so that I want Eric to have a lot of clarity about what it is that we want to be voting on the 3rd. This is what Eric has presented as we talked about him presenting a plan. So I don't know if that was clear what I'm asking.
Well, but I think in the spirit of giving the public notice, I think it's hard for them to opine on something abstract. I think we'll get better community feedback on a real date, and then we can take with that what we will. I agree. I feel like we need to actually have more defined guardrails, because part of what's happening is it's so ambiguous at times that, one, I think people are, to David's point, they're sort of inventing the truth as they believe it to be true, whether it's right or not. So, when the state came out and said the 28th, people just assumed it meant, mask off. So I want to support what you're saying. I think a date is actually a good idea, because otherwise we're just going to, I think we're going to spin. We're going to get the circle of death on the committee, just talking and talking and talking.
But I think we do have a date.
What was that?
We have a date.
We have a date, correct. There is a date.
We either need to move the date, which I honestly don't support. I support this proposal, or we need to figure out another date.
I couldn't quite hear what she said.
Yeah, figure out another date.
Okay.
I'm so sorry if my mic is.
No, you were saying that we have a date, let me just make sure I heard you correctly, that we have a date.
I think we have a proposal and we have a date.
That's better.
So I don't know, maybe we want to make changes to this proposal. But I do think there is a proposal on the table that the public is able to comment.
Yeah, and I thank you, Julia. I guess what I want, I guess I just want to, I understand that anything can happen. There's lots of wisdom in this room and things can change. But I guess I just want a little bit of direction about, do we feel like this is a clear, we know that the community understands when we vote on something that it is an up or down, that we vote on something. It's not a done deal until we vote on it. And so we know the community is not afraid to write to us if there's something on our agenda that they don't want us to vote for, or if there's something on our agenda that they do want us to vote for, they do. So I think having it out there is helpful.
Just using the data from December, January, and February, we got the bump right after the kids came back from vacation. And it took about 3 weeks for that to settle, to back to like pre-break levels. I would support this memo, and I would vote for it if we change the date to March 14th. That gives us 3 weeks after vacation for numbers to come back to normal.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. On the 14th.
Okay, I can't do math, it's late.
The irony is really
Michelle Bailey?
balanced.
Yeah, Michelle?
Yeah, I would prefer the 14th. I'll support the 7th if that's the will of the committee, but I would prefer the 14th for kind of the same reason. But like I said, if it's the will of the committee for the 7th, I will support it. I think Eric's vetted it through enough people.
I would also prefer the 14th.
I'll support the 14th.
It's 2 weeks, right?
It's 2 weeks after February vacation.
That's also when Lynn is lifting their policy, on the 14th.
What'd you say?
Lynn is lifting their policy on the 14th.
I think Lexington is also looking at theirs on the
So,
14th.
I guess I don't, I'm thinking about a lot of different things. One is that, this is, yeah, okay, no, that's fine, yep.
Just to get back into what you were just saying, well, we could really discuss this ad nauseum. I think there are 2 dates out there now. I think, let's let the feedback come in. Exactly what you said.
Yeah, let's get the feedback.
Exactly what you said. And then I think everyone's here is, besides Michelle, who wants to get off now.
But also I want to say that Superintendent Tracy has put this date for a reason in the memo, and I don't think we should be discounting that and the leadership team.
Thank you. That really was my hesitancy there, is that you were able to articulate what I wasn't able to articulate, which is that is my hesitancy, which is that this is a date. The proposal is, if we were to bring that the committee has to vote on it. The committee can say no. But
This gets back to my point about releasing the memo and then not be able to adjust the date because we didn't have the conversation first.
So I think this is the point, is we're having this conversation right now. That's what we're doing.
There's also multiple tiers. I understand where you're coming from. And
I understand where everyone is coming
That's
from.
my responsibility for tying everybody's hands.
Yeah.
And that was not the intention. That was never the intention.
No, and I didn't think it was, but
think-
it's like, then we get here.
Yeah.
Right? And they're like, okay, well, putting this out there, we're not saying the 14th date, and I'm not throwing the 14th date out there also, but what I'm hearing is, we're not throwing that 14th date out there to say we're not believing in what Eric put, but like, this is the conversation that we thought we were coming in here with after getting all this data, to be able to start throwing those dates around, right? And so, if we really want to put that back, get the feedback of the community, get the feedback of the students and everything, with those 2 dates there, then I think everyone's got to come back to this table on the 3rd and feel confident that they're making the best decision, for the community, at that point. And, I mean, or we could just sit here for 4 hours and just keep talking around in circles,
Can I ask Chris?
All right.
Can I ask Chris a question?
Yes.
This is, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, and I know that you do not speak for the entire student population, but I know that in general, the elementary students will do basically whatever you tell them to for the most part, and that it's really, the data from the high school is very clear that students are ready to lift the mandate. So as a practical matter, we're really talking about a difference of 5 school days, right? In reality, do you feel as though, and I think we have reasons for it, we're talking about the data, like the data, 5 days of data and post-vacation bump is actually rather meaningful. But I want to ask you, who's closer to the psychology of high school students than I am on every level, do you feel like the student population, even though they're really ready to be done with masks, do you think they could conceptualize why we might give another 5 days or a different date? But right now we're talking about these 2 dates, so let's try to be concrete. Do you think that they would understand and accept that in the scheme of this marathon we've run, we're talking about 5 more days?
I definitely think the students can understand. What I'm more scared about is the parents understanding.
Oh my God.
I'm more interested in hearing from you as the student. The parents will come talk to us. But I'm asking for you because I think ultimately one of the other things that we're hearing, and I think has been a concern from teachers, is they're tired of being the mask police. And that only comes when students don't follow the mask rules. So those 2 things go together. There's a dance there. Student compliance and teacher mask police are 2 parts of a party. Do you think that the students would understand what we're doing and accept it, or do you think there will just be chaos?
I think definitely 5 days, students would accept that. If you guys could keep pushing and back more and more, then students will start to get more concerned about what's happening. But 5 days definitely, I think, would be fine. I know that there's parents going around Hamilton uncensored and stuff like that, sending stuff about whatever makes it comes after February 28th, but that's with parents. As right now with students, I think that would be completely fine.
Okay, I appreciate that.
So I'm going to,
thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to say it is 10:30. It sounds to me as if this group appears that on the 3rd, we are not going to leave here until we have a date to unmask. Does that sound accurate?
Mm-hmm.
We have a recommendation currently from the superintendent. On the 3rd, you'll be able to speak to what the current situation is on the 3rd, right?
Based on the feedback.
Based on feedback, whatever happens over vacation, we'll have, right? Does that sound like we're still, that's been the plan all along, is that we're going to vote on the 3rd. So that's, everybody's still in agreement that on the 3rd, we're going to come up with a date.
I think we have to, or else the public will not tolerate it. And frankly, I wouldn't. I think we do. We need to make a vote at some point.
I don't think this board would tolerate it.
Yeah.
I think we got work
Okay.
to do.
All right, so it is 10:30, so are we, well, I guess I need to make a motion to ask if we could meet for 3 more minutes.
So moved.
All right, Julia?
I think you need a second.
I thought that was, I'm sorry, I need a
Sorry,
second.
I second.
That was your second. You seconded me.
I seconded Dave.
Yes,
Sorry,
Julia,
Michaela.
yes or no?
Yes.
David?
I'm sorry, what are we voting?
3 minutes to talk.
Yes.
3 minutes.
All right, Dana's yes. Anna?
Yes.
Jen?
Yep.
Michelle?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yep.
Okay.
Go.
All right, I really think the only thing I really promised you was a list of the school committee candidates who have these are the list of the people who have pulled papers, and I have the following people I know. We have confirmed they returned their paperwork, so they will be on the ballot. Courtney Ashwood, David Frankel, David Polito, Andrea Van Boven, excuse me, yes. I also have Brian Scudder, Lauren Lambert, and Amy Kuhnberger, who I know have pulled papers, and I am not aware of whether or not they have them complete. We don't know, correct?
We'll know tomorrow.
We'll know tomorrow,
Yep.
whether they had until this evening to.
Oh, I was gonna say, the deadline was today, right?
Yeah.
Today's the final day.
Today's the final day, correct.
I'm not gonna change my mind.
I had promised you that information, and yes, there were a couple of notable people that were not on that list. Did you have anything?
One quick thing.
Okay.
Really quick.
You have like 60 seconds.
It happened during this meeting, but I just received a letter from the state that we received the Accelerating Literacy Learning with High-Quality Instructional Materials Grant, 80 grand.
Nice.
So
You worked
congratulations,
hard on that.
Jen
Very nice.
Clifford.
Good job, Jen Clifford.
She worked hard on that, and we
Nice.
did get it.
Awesome.
You said that was $80,000? Vinny, don't go spend it right away.
Like, oh, I got another $80,000.
Awesome. That's great.
Fortunately, he knew what I knew, so it wasn't a surprise.
Vinny just got to 0, and now he's at plus 80 again.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm gonna, because I only got 3 minutes, I'm gonna skip all this, and I'm gonna let you know that we do not need to have an executive session.
I move that we adjourn.
Hold on.
Was that a second by Jen?
Second.
Okay. Julia?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Dana, yes. Anna?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
And we are adjourned.